It's time for MacBreak Weekly. Andy's here, Alex is here, Lori's here. We've got lots to talk about. WWDC's coming up next week. We'll let Andy weigh in on the ARM transition. We got lots of interesting thoughts there. We'll also talk about the winners of the Swift Student Challenge. One of them is definitely a hit. And Apple stores are reopening. How are they going to test before they let you in? We got an idea. It's all coming up next on MacBreak Weekly. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you from Twit's LastPass Studios. Stay in control when it comes to your company's access points and authentication. LastPass makes enterprise-level security simple for your remote workforce. Check out lastpass.com/twit to learn more.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly, episode 718, recorded Tuesday, June 16th, 2020. Taste the mustard. MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Worldwide Technology. Worldwide Technology's Advanced Technology Center is like no other testing and research lab, with more than $500 million of equipment, including OEMs like NetApp. And the ATC is virtual, so you can access it 24/7. To learn more and to get insights into all it offers, go to wwt.com/twit. It's time for MacBreak Weekly, the show we get together with a great team of people and talk about Apple. Lori Gill is here. She's a senior editor, of course, at imore.com. It's great to see you. Managing editor. Which is better, senior or managing?
Oh, you know, labels.
One of them.
Who cares?
You're one of them. You're an important person, a VIP.
I tell people what to do. That's all that matters.
Yeah, that's right. Do you still get to write as a managing editor, or are you just
Not as much as I want to.
Yeah.
It's harder. Yeah.
You've got a good team, though. And it's all distributed, right? There is no office.
No office. We all work remotely. Everyone's in a different place all over the world. We have some people that live in different countries and stuff too. So.
And that's not COVID. That's just the way it is.
That's just the way it is. Yeah. I know our larger corporate parents, they do have offices. So when everyone had to start working from home, it was really funny to see our coworkers just unable to handle how I work from home. And we're like, we've been doing this for years.
Isn't that funny? You're talking about future. That's amazing.
Yeah, future. That's right.
Yes, yeah. I think Renee told us they have a New York office, which is
they have a New York office, and they have a Bath office, and I think
England, which is
and
beautiful.
a London office. Yeah.
Alex Lindsay is also here, just fresh off his office hours. Hi, Alex.
Hello.
090.media. If you need to stream, this is the cat. This is the guy who can do it. And office hours seen 7 days a week on YouTube, 7 a.m. Pacific.
We're 5 days a week on YouTube. And then 7 days a week on Zoom. So we do one of the hours. We do on one of the hours that we.
Why would you do it and not put it on YouTube? Is that the secret hours?
Well, it's just that we don't. That way, we don't have to worry about releases. Like your second hour that you're doing, we could probably do if we wanted to. But for many of the folks we bring on, then we'd have to talk to them about, can we put this on YouTube and everything else. And so they don't
necessarily have permission to do that because they're working.
Yeah, and so it's easier to just do one. And rather than trying to change it per day, we just decided to have it as a general rule that. And the hour before that is really relaxed. And so we talk about a lot of things, and it's not really worth putting on YouTube. So there's just 1 hour that is just pure Q&A. And so we decided to go ahead and put that up on YouTube so people could get a sense of it. And the weekends we take off too, because I just don't want to think about it. So we don't, because we do 7 hours on Saturday and then 3 hours on Sunday.
You just Saturday's leave it running all day.
Are you Jerry Lewis? Are you raising money for something?
Yeah, exactly.
If you start singing, you'll never walk alone. I'm going to really.
Who are your kids?
Saturday is what we call the long day, which is that we do 2 hours of Q&A, and then we do 4 1-hour sessions. So we have Nick Justishin from Drexel University is doing Unreal, and then Steve Bays, who used to be the senior product manager for Final Cut, does Final Cut deep cuts. So we get it pretty much from the guy who was on the team, and then we have Alex Goldner from that does a ton of work for the BBC, showing how live stuff, graphics get built and stuff like that, and then but we range all over the place from Unreal to audio to other things like, in Final Cut and production. So it is very, for Mac leaning, but there's definitely plenty of folks that are using other software as well. So
I am totally intimidated, but I am going to be on Thursday. It's at
we're so excited to have you. Everyone's excited because there's a lot of MacBreak listeners that are already in it because they've heard about us talking about it here. So so there's a ton of people that are excited.
We should mention there's a limit of 500 total people that can attend. So you could see it after the fact. But
yeah, so there's you want to get there. We open the doors again at 6 a.m. Leo won't be on until 8. Be
fast asleep at 6.
But yeah, it's limited to 500 concurrent, and so we haven't hit that number yet. But we have thought about that Thursday maybe.
I want to hit that
it
number,
up there.
so everybody to tune in. So it's at youtube.com/Alex Lindsay for the after show, but for the produced version. But you can. There's a link at that page in the comments to the actual Zoom seminar.
Yeah, and if you want to, the easier to remember link is it's just bit.ly/the office hours.
Oh, nice.
If you I finally realized I should probably make something that was easier to remember. So if you do bit.ly/the office hours, you'll get to the Zoom registration, and you can jump in there and register. And then, if you don't want to get emails from us, then cancel it later.
Nice.
But there's we had one of the designers from Sound Devices talking about how their noise assist works, and tomorrow we're spending an hour talking about lenses. So anyway, it's a pretty fun. If you like media geekery, it's a pretty fun morning.
Are you sure it's the office hours?
It should be bit.ly. bit.ly/ the office hours.
That brings me to a
the
YouTube channel called The Office Hours.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's.
So we'll
I don't
get
even
you
know what that is.
We'll get you the bit.ly.
Podcast about The Office, maybe?
No, it looks like they're reenacting The Office or something.
It's children reenacting
reenacting The Office, I think. I don't know.
It's interesting because when I put it in, bit.ly/the office hours.
THEOFFICEHOURS or no S?
Yep. With an S.
Anyway, hi, Alex. And the link is available on the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Alex Lindsay. And also with us.
Oh, it's something I just learned. I didn't realize that bit.lys are case dependent. So it's the office hours. It has to be, you have to cut. So that's not very useful. Never mind. It's because it's suddenly someone with 42 subscribers won't understand why everybody came there after they haven't done it.
So it's capital T, capital O, capital H.
Capital H. And I thought I didn't realize that it was that. So
that's interesting. I didn't know it was case sensitive either.
I didn't either. Yeah.
Now we've learned something.
There's something new that we learned about bit.ly is that it's case sensitive. Wow.
Here we are, only 6 minutes into the show, and you've learned something. See, and we haven't even introduced Andy and Akko yet. Hello, Andrew. It's great to have you back.
That's one to grow on. Hi, good to be back.
We rotate, just as a note, because there's so many people who want to be on the show, we rotate one person out every week. So Renee is odd man out this week, as Andy was last week. He'll be back next week. And we thank you for your understanding. But I think this show particularly, everybody has a lot to say, and it's better if we have fewer people on it. And I will also shut up just to make more room. How about that? We now know there will be we knew there'd be a keynote. We know what time, 10 a.m. on Monday. WWDC 2020 kicks off. I presume it's Tim Apple, but we do know it's coming from the Steve Jobs Theater. And I'm thrilled, excited, more excited than I have been in a while for WWDC.
Something new, something different.
Yeah,
it's going to be interesting.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
It's one of the things that might be even make it more interesting is the idea of, do they do the entire keynote live, or do they have some stuff pre-taped? In which case they could have a much, much deeper bench of talent to draw upon, or they might be able to give far, far more substantive information and demonstrations from there. So it's sort of like just like it was exciting for the first couple of weeks to see see like Jimmy Fallon and everybody, all the late night hosts have to do shows from their rooms, from their bedrooms that they've never done before. It's going to be interesting to see Apple try to give this keynote without like 3,000 cheering people, of which like 500, 800 are like Apple people. They won't have to be able to insert applause breaks into the script for the keynote.
The Microsoft developer event had a mix. Some of the stuff was pre-recorded and some of it was live. Maybe it's just me, but I could always tell when it was pre-recorded because the energy was worse. It just felt canned. The live stuff that Microsoft did, including their main keynote with Scott Hanselman, was fantastic because it was live.
Well, I think that there's a subtle energy that you get from doing a live event that is just really hard to produce when you start to now have control over every perfect edit and all the close-ups and everything else, and it's been rehearsed. It just doesn't feel the same. You can make something that's great, but you then have to make it much better. So I think that when you don't do live, you really have to up the production value. You can't just do a stage version pre-recorded and have it have the same energy as the live version of that. So, I think we talked in the past about Connections. Connections is great. It's not live. He figured it all out, but it's very well produced. So.
No, absolutely.
But
some of the best television, most of it is not live. But I think for a presentation like a keynote, it's noticeable. I prefer live.
Well, the question is, do we need a presentation like a keynote? But that's a whole other discussion.
Right.
In one way, I think we do, though, because we need to be Apple likes to kind of like be in control of the story that's being told. They like to have the narrative. And if they don't give us the narrative to talk about and write about, then we just kind of make it up as we go along, and it may not kind of fit what they wanted us to know about something. So for new features in an operating system or something like that, if they just said, here's a list of all the new features, nothing would get called attention to it, so that we wouldn't know what to assume would be like the most important feature. So I do think a keynote is important to generate the kind of buzz that Apple's really good at.
I think you could make one. Also, the thing is, you could take all I would say is that you could take a 2-hour keynote, you could cut it down and create a highly produced 1 hour that would say all the things that you want to say very fast, but it would look like a real show, rather than trying to have it be people up there trying to do the best they can at presenting.
Yeah. I don't know. I think
Go ahead, Andy.
That's good. And we have seen what happens when you try to create a big launch that has a lot of subtle things to it without having an organized, like, hour-long where the company knows that that this is propaganda, but nonetheless this is at least the propaganda that it's interesting to see what features and what technologies they specifically want to highlight. Google got the double whammy of they were going to announce Android 11 during the May Google I/O. That got canceled because of coronavirus. Then they were going to have Android 11 as a big live launch event on YouTube, but then they decided out of good taste to cancel that because of the Black Lives Matter protest. And so they were left essentially with just a whole bunch of developer-oriented videos posted to YouTube and a blog post. And that left a big gap for commentators to have to say, okay, well, now we have the beta. Now we're going to have to explain on our own terms what doesn't matter what Google thinks is important. Doesn't matter how Google shows something off. We're going to have to dig through this ourselves and come up with our own explanations.
That's what a keynote
this
really
is. Not a bad thing.
That's what a keynote is. It's spin. It's context. I mean, there's two ways to put it. So I would say it's spin, but it's contextualization, right, Lori? It's telling people what's important.
Right.
Yeah.
Because this is.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lori. I interrupted.
This is exactly what I'm saying, that, Apple likes to make sure that they kind of have control over how this information is presented to us. We can disseminate it all we want afterward, but they're the ones who are going to say stuff like, there's a new ECG feature or a new sleep feature on the iPhone or on the Watch OS. They're going to call attention to that because they worked on it. They think it's a great feature. They want to push that feature. If they just give us a big list of things, we have to figure out of the hundreds and hundreds of features, which ones are the most important ones. They want to tell us which ones are the most important ones. And then later we get to kind of weed through all the other stuff and find other features we think are fun. But out of the gate, and all keynotes are this. They wouldn't live stream them if they weren't meant as a marketing tactic to get us interested in what's to come.
Yeah.
Well, and in a lot of ways, the keynotes are still for the press in some ways, because if for a long time Apple didn't live stream them. That's Leo live streamed them from the events. So
the late Leo,
but I think
the former journalist known as Leo. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think that for a while Apple decided that they were only going to put press in that position and then spin it just to the press. So I do agree with you that a lot, because in reality, from a pure popular perspective, the most viewed thing is usually the highlight reel, the 10 or the 8 or 10 minutes of just tell me what you actually released. Yeah. Is all most people want to walk through.
Is that the biggest view numbers? I guess that makes sense.
If you look on YouTube, I think those numbers are pretty high.
So we're so obsessive, we watch every freaking minute of it. We analyze it, we watch it again.
And we freeze frame it and look at the words on the screen and see what that means.
Literally. Yeah, we do. That's one of the reasons I don't mind not being in the room, because I think you get it. It's just like watching a baseball game in the stands versus at home. You get the ambiance and the fun and the smell of the popcorn and the crowd at the game. But if you really want to see what's going on, the television coverage is always the best way to watch.
Absolutely, and from a commentary perspective, it's much easier to do commentary on the keynote because it's not moving very fast.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Now, I have to say, there is a range. Google's developers conference is always a little bit for developers and a little bit for the press. Microsoft's this year was really for developers. They made no pretense. Even when Satya Nadella was talking, it really wasn't it was certainly not if it was intended for the press, it wasn't very effective. Apple is kind of on the other side of the spectrum. Everything Apple does is about marketing, even to developers. And then they have the stuff on the side that you don't see. But when they stream that's for the press. That's for the people.
And I believe that they're streaming all the things they normally stream on the first day of WW, which is they'll have the keynote, which is like
3 different.
But then there's the State of the Union, and then there is the awards. Is that right? Are those
the awards is actually happening on the 29th.
29th, but they have 3 events that usually happen on that first day, and I think that those are all being streamed. And what they do is the second 2 tend to be very developer focused, and not really publicly focused. So they have a couple more opportunities to talk to the developers, but the first one is definitely for the developers, but leaning towards the press, and then the other ones start to get much more into the nitty gritty. And then, of course, you have a whole week of getting really into the weeds.
And it's interesting because I think Apple really has come around. For a while, they didn't stream any of these. Now it's on this is the Apple website. And they're saying, not just to developers, to everybody, add to your calendar so you can watch the keynote. I mean, they really want everybody to watch, I think.
And you've been able to watch the WWDC sessions from the developer website. So it's been pretty easy to access these things all along. They almost had it all. It's like they had all the buttons ready to be sewn up before this happened, because they were already doing so much, not live streaming, but like allowing you to watch the sessions after they happened. So this is definitely kind of the next step in that process. And since they added support to different devices so that you can access the developer app on your Mac and on Apple TV, I really think that's going to help a lot of people that they don't want to just sit there and use their phone. Because I think the developer app has really kind of just been a way to, when you're there, get more information. Whereas now it's kind of being treated as this is where you find your information. And I like that they've opened that up to
They say it right at
devices.
the top, download the app. That's what they want everybody to do.
Yeah, but it only works in Catalina, so good luck.
Sorry, Andy?
It looks like it only you have. I tried to install it, and it says, "Well, no, it says it requires Catalina."
Oh,
I could be wrong, but and that's like I'm going to have to, and I will have to create a WWDC specific boot drive because I have not put Catalina on any of my working Macs because I don't want to take that leap to a tighter sandboxed Mac until I absolutely need one.
Well, and also if you're going to use the app, you have to be a developer, and I was about to pay the $99 and now it wants a picture of my driver's license, and this is there's a little bit of a speed bump. Go ahead, Alex. I'm sorry I interrupted.
All I'm going to say is that it's still I mean, we'll see what happens with this app, with the videos that are there. But up until at least through this, up until this app was released and until we've seen it work, the best place to view the developer stuff is on Chrome.
Right.
So, because you can download an extension that allows you to play back quickly.
Right.
The problem is watching sessions, whether it's from Google or Microsoft or Facebook or Apple, watching developer sessions at 1x is just brutal. Like, it's just really like, why do we need to do that? Like, there's no, it's the most insane decision process of not having, not being able to go to 1.5 or 1.75x or maybe even 2x depending on the developer.
Holy
Alex, this is something I've never thought of.
Yeah, me neither.
Oh my God.
Lori and I listen at 1x. Yeah. Lisa and Alex, my wife, listen double speed to everything. Their brains work better than ours, I guess.
Well, I guess for me, the problem that I have, I mean, I don't, and I think part of it's an Audible thing that I listen to books at, that speed all the time.
Yes, it does too.
The issue is that I have, there are definitely sessions that I have to slow down on. But for me, it just takes them so long to get to the point. It takes everybody so long to get to the point that you just want to go faster. And so, but I think that for me, my brain gets saturated at about between 1.5 and 2. My brain gets saturated with the content, and then I don't think about anything else. I'm able to focus. When information's coming to me really slowly, I'm thinking about 6 other things while people are talking. So it's very hard for me to remember what they said. so anyway, so I needed to go faster. And
actually, I'm being silly and teasing you because there's a significant amount of evidence that the faster the content comes in the ears, the better it's understood. So.
Again, because you're not having other thoughts that are unrelated that are going on at the same time. Yeah. You're pulling all that information in, and it's you can do that in a bunch of different ways. You can play it faster. You can also create denser content. I think we talked about this when we were talking about connections. Is I can't play connections at 2x. Because I can't keep track of.
Yeah, that one's a real timer.
But like in our house, if someone's playing connections and it gets played a lot. No one's allowed to talk in the living room because you can't. You're afraid of losing like a couple words, and so that's extremely well.
Clarify for people who weren't here a couple of weeks ago. We're talking about a very famous TV show called Connections by historian James Burke, which was on PBS.
He's still around, by the way, Leo.
He is
like a triangulation with James Burke. Would be.
Oh my God! I think, as I remember, we've been trying to get him for like 10 years.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I'm a huge fan. This was in the 70s, wasn't it? This was a long time ago.
I was posting about, I think I talked about this, but I was posting about that I wanted Alton Brown to team up with ILM and do a new Connections. And Alton Brown immediately came on and said, while I was designing Good Eats, I was binging on Connections. So Good Eats is basically Connections applied.
Everybody was hugely influenced by this TV show.
Yeah.
And I should correct myself. It was on BBC initially. I think in the United States it was aired on public broadcasting because, of course, it was way too brainy for NBC, ABC, or CBS. And most of it is still on. You're watching it on the Internet Archive, but most of it is also on YouTube. So you can watch the show still today, and it is well worth it. So the special event Keynote is 10 a.m. Monday, June 22nd, followed, and I don't think we're going to stream this, followed by the State of the Union at 2 p.m. Should we stream it? What is the State of the Union, Lori? What do they do at the State of the Union?
It's basically the way Alex was describing it. It's kind of the more brainy, deep dive stuff. So whatever Apple announces at the keynote, it's broad stroking and it's kind of a general, here's a demo, here's how it's done. And then the State of the Union is more like, here's the code. And here's how you would implement the code. It's a little more brainy.
This time it's titled, maybe it always is, but this time it's titled Platforms State of the Union.
Yes.
So it's going to be macOS, iOS, tvOS, watchOS, that kind of thing.
And it goes over all the same stuff. It just goes into it with a little bit more eye toward the developer instead of eye toward like the press or the general public.
So it's really the same keynote done twice, once for the normies and one for the geeks.
There's usually so much.
There's more. Go ahead.
There's so much to talk about of what's new in DubDub that you can't. The keynote is like the 10,000 foot view. The next one is 1,000 feet, and then the sessions are the 100 feet and below.
Apple's saying June 23rd through 26th, so Tuesday through Friday, 100 plus engineering sessions. Watch on the web or the Apple Developer app on iPhone, iPad, and Apple TV. They're also creating developer forums. So that's interesting. And they're going to put their engineers on the forums. So this is how they're going to have the interactivity. Starting the first day of the conference, eligible members can connect with Apple engineers. They're going to put 1,000 engineers in there over the WWDC content on the forums. There are also by-appointment developer labs for one-on-one guidance. If you're Lauren Brichter, you can go there and say, hey, how does that work? Or, what's this kit do?
That's going to be a really important thing for them to implement somehow, because a lot of developers look forward to WWDC as a time to talk directly to an engineer saying, here is specifically the problem I'm having transitioning my app from one platform to another, or here's what I want my app to do, but I'm not allowed to do it under restrictions that are under the App Store. How am I supposed to do that? How do we get around with it? And this is an opportunity for engineers to speak directly and frankly, because it's not for public consumption. It's for here's us trying to solve your problem with you. So it's not only specifically trying to solve problems for specific developers, but it's also good outreach. So this is something that a lot of developers buy that ticket to make sure they get that face time, and they essentially get that face in their logbook as someone they can talk to in the future. So this is going to be, that was something that was going to be really important for Apple to replicate if they're going to be doing a remote WWDC.
I'm guessing they're not using Zoom to do that.
No, they're using Google Meet.
Yeah. And then you were right. The awards are the following Monday on the 29th. The design awards.
Usually the awards actually take place the second or third day. I think it's usually the second day of WWDC, but they're actually postponing it till the conference is completely over this year.
It's going to be.
I'm glad they're doing it though.
Oh gosh, yeah. The design awards are. I'm sure for developers,
I haven't seen any information about it, and then I just recently read that they're holding it on the 29th. So I was really happy to see that it's happening. So
nice.
It's where the big prize is just that placement on the App Store for that period of time. Where if they delay that a couple of weeks, that's a couple of weeks of money that they miss out on.
They're also doing the Swift Student Challenge. So it's actually in Swift Playgrounds, I think. So you create a Swift playground on the topic of your choice. Winners will get the highly coveted WWDC 20 jacket and pin set. How else can we get that? I want that.
Yeah.
The Swift Student Challenge winners were actually announced, and
it's over.
The great thing about it was everybody won. It was 350 entrants and 350 people won, which I thought was really sweet.
Oh, that's really great.
It's also a little bit like a big treasure hunt, and then we find out, the prize was love. Like, come on.
Well, think about this though,
nice,
Andy.
but still, come on.
Think about this. Usually, however many people attend WWDC get the jacket and pins, right? There are only 350 people with those jacket and pins, and it's those Swift Developer Challenge students. Like, they did win. They won something really cool.
This is so cool.
Do any of them take like a size 46 jacket? And do any of them need a few $100s right now?
I'm sure one or two will go on eBay. Tuition's expensive these days. A lot of them are.
There you go.
A lot of them have to pay college tuition. I guess these are. I'm looking at the newsroom announcement of the winners, which was on the 16th. So shame of me. Oh no, that's today. Never mind. It's
today.
Came out.
Yeah, it just happened this morning.
Okay. Are these the pins or? I love the I love to code.
I don't think we've seen the pins.
I want the I love to code pin. That's really cool. Neat stuff. And read the press release, because some of these kids are going to change the world. This is really, really exciting stuff from all over the world.
Nothing more exciting than like really, really young people who have not been taught what won't work and what has been tried before. They just have an idea in their head of what they want to exist, and then they make it exist.
Well, and that's, by the way, I got to point out the beauty of Swift and the platform is you can be a high schooler and develop something pretty polished and amazing.
No, I'm so jealous of young people who are learning to code, because every 10 years I really have to. It was so tough to break myself out of the pre-object-oriented programming mindset that I'd molded my brain on since I was like 10 years old. There were kids that were like, I was like 22, 23, and their kids were like 10 years old. And because they started learning like objective languages, it's like, but wait a minute, you don't have to do a loop? Wait a minute, where does you break out of the, It was so it's exciting now that when you have kids who now are growing up knowing that you can the best way to write an effective program that does magical things is to write only the most specific code to your app as possible and support the framework that you've been given. Because not only there are a lot of like older programmers that are suffering right now in the App Store because they have been trained to solve a problem however it has to be solved. If the systems that Apple gives them for writing certain pieces of code doesn't work, they will find a way to work around it to make sure that their app does what they want. Whereas a younger developer is going to say, "Oh wow, well look, here's this brand new system for networking. I'm certainly going to use this stack. I'm not going to do any modifications to it. I'm not going to use the 10-year-old stack that I created myself, and because it's what our entire shop is based on." This is why a 12-year-old can rocket so far ahead a 20-year-old, 30, 40-year-old programmer.
Well, so some of the winners include Sophia Ongale. She is a sophomore at Fordham University, created an app for resources for survivors of sexual assault. Another one is Palesh Taneja. He grew up in New Delhi. He got dengue fever when he was a kid, so he created an app that will predict how mosquito-borne diseases would spread. But my favorite is this one from Devin Green. He's a high school senior in Castro Valley, California. Devin had trouble getting up in the morning, so he designed a program that uses a pressure mat under his mattress. If the weight is still on the mattress after he's supposed to be up, an alarm goes off, but he can't stop the alarm until he uses his phone to scan a QR code. He says there are 12 QR codes around my house, and they're randomized every morning, so I never know where to go to shut the alarm off.
Oh my God, that was like
That's
one of
really
my first
clever.
Apple script. I don't know if it was my first HyperScript or my first Apple script, where it was an alarm clock that would choose a random number and then calculate the square of it, display that square, and it would not turn off the volume until I typed in what the square root of that number was.
Oh, that's perfect.
Oh, wow.
That kills two birds with one stone. You get to
Yeah.
learn your square roots, and you also
wake up.
get up. By the way, he is graduating this year, which is hard. I'll tell you what, because they didn't get to walk. They didn't even have classes for the last half of the year. He's going to Stanford in the fall. So congratulations to all of the winners. 350 winners. That's really fantastic. And I'm excited about WWDC. Now, we talked last week. Alex, you weren't here, so I'll let you, if you have anything to say. We spent a long time talking about ARM because I think there's going to be a lot of interesting stuff. I'm really curious what they're going to do with iPad OS because I'm starting to really love the Magic Keyboard iPad combination. feel like this is the computer I've always wanted. But I think we're most interested, at least I am, in the ARM transition. And I'm sure, Alex, you might have some thoughts. We talked about this. No, wait a minute. Who wasn't here? Andy wasn't here.
It was Andy.
Andy,
wasn't here.
what were your thoughts?
Andy needs to talk about it.
Yeah, it's your chance.
Let it out.
Mostly, it's that I hope that it's not going to be a gentle transition for anybody who writes software or creates hardware. I hope that it's a gentle transition. I hope it's the sort of thing where Apple realizes that the first people who are going to adopt this are going to be kind of like, I think it's going to be kind of like how the MacBook Air rolled out, where it was a almost unusable computer, except for the people that specifically wanted and lusted after the lightest and thinnest Mac or laptop that ever existed. They were willing to suffer along with a really slow CPU that spins the fans up. They're willing to suffer with just one USB port. But the fact that it was the size of a magazine, that was worth the money for them. It was worth all the suffering. So I think that the analog for that is going to be a MacBook Nothing sized Mac that runs on ARM, for people who they don't care that maybe this won't support Thunderbolt right away, and maybe it's going to be limited to almost like an iOS range of software to begin with. But the idea of having a MacBook that runs for 18 hours on battery and is as thin as a MacBook Nothing, and also can do some special tricks because of the intimacy between a custom designed CPU and the rest of the hardware designed around it, that's going to be enough of a sell for them to go for it. I'm still curious to find out how long it would take for them to create a custom ARM that could create like an iMac or even a Mac Mini powered computer, or a Mac that is powerful enough to satisfy people who would be buying a regular MacBook Pro or a Mac Mini or a MacPro today. I wonder how long it'll take for them to do that. There are a lot of things that are non-trivial about it, including how do you make sure that these things can use things like Thunderbolt? How do you incorporate technologies that were developed by Intel that you get for free on top of any Intel chip? And so a lot of these things are going to be real. It's like digging up the lawn and checking out your sewer pipes. A lot of stuff is going to have to be rehooked up. There's going to be a lot of pain in this transition. I just hope that they limit the pain to people who have signed up for that pain, as opposed to saying, guess what? Nothing works anymore, and it's not going to get any better for anyone for at least 7 years. You're welcome. But it is exciting. What I said on Twitter a week ago or 2 weeks ago was that so long as there are benefits for the user in the form of, for instance, they're able to make a super powerful Mac that costs only $1,000, like the $2,000 Mac now costs only $1,000, or they have because they're able to create a CPU in harmony with all the other hardware inside that machine, that's also in harmony with the OS, that's also in harmony with Xcode, means that this hardware can do things that no Windows machine can possibly achieve, simply because Apple really is designing everything from top to bottom, all the way to being able to have, again, 18 or 20 hours of battery life, because they can really tune this CPU to exactly what it needs to do inside this machine. What I'm getting at is that if it's solving problems for consumers, if there's a benefit to consumers, this is wonderful. If all they're doing is solving problems for Apple and allowing their user base to be in a position where, well, sorry if you bought a Mac, an Intel-based Mac this year, because instead of being able to use it still 10 years from now, it's going to be effectively dead 5 years from now. We're not in the position of we're not here to help out Apple. We're here to help out ourselves. That's why we put down our money for Macs. But there's such a huge opportunity here, so much bigger than the opportunities that were presented when they transition from PowerPC to Intel, that it's wonderful to imagine what an entry-level Mac could be like 5 years from now.
I actually hope they do it quickly. There's two examples. They did it very quickly to Intel in less than a year. They took a damn long time moving from 68,000 to PowerPC. And I think they've taken a really long time, more than 5 years, on this 32-bit transition. And I think it's clear that the 32-bit transition took too long. The people dragged their feet, and as a result, there are a lot of 32-bit apps that didn't get updated. They said, we got time. Oops. So I'm hoping that they do it more like the 1 year transition. Now, I know the big reason they won't is because they just released a Mac Pro. And that's a commercial consideration. But as commercial considerations aside, I think they could do it all fast. And I'm sure, you guys correct me, is there anything about this architecture, the A12, A13, A1000 architecture, that means it couldn't be every bit as fast as a Xeon or as powerful as a Xeon? As you said, they can customize it for their needs.
Whether it is out of the gate, I think that they have the opportunity to do that. I think that there's a lot of speed available to that, and I think that they don't have to do it out of the gate either. I mean, I don't know. I know that there's rumors that they're going to talk about.
There's no like limit in big, a RISC processor or a low. I mean, we've seen ARMs as low power RISC processors, but that doesn't mean they can't be as fast as they want to be, right? In fact, I wouldn't be surprised. Forget 10 core. I would be surprised the next Mac Pro is 64 core or 128 core or more.
I mean, I think that the big advantage of owning all the hardware development is that you can really plan a lot of things to work together, right, and in a way that is hard. You don't have to expose. It gives them a lot more freedom to build the apps and build the OS so that it fully takes advantage of every. So there's a little bit of how fast is the processor, and there's also how much of the processor does the OS take advantage of? And so I think that there's both of those things could end up being a snappier experience. I think that if Apple releases one piece of hardware this year that is using that, one piece of like a traditional Mac this year that uses ARM, I think that's aggressive. I think that if they get all the way to ARM on all the machines in 5 years, I think that would be aggressive.
But what we don't know,
I'm not saying they won't do it. But
what we don't know is what's in the lab right now. They've been working on this probably for years.
Yeah, and there's
we've been hearing rumors about ARM processors on Mac for a couple of years.
They probably have a Mac Pro equivalent machine in the lab. Right. Why wouldn't they?
Well, But again, the easiest thing to do would be to tell developers, hey, in a year we're going to start releasing this hardware, and you need to take advantage of it.
That's the issue, is developers, and that's why you do it fast, because they are lazy, as we know from the 32 to 64 transition.
But again, in a year we're going to release some of the. I think that the Pro ones will not happen that fast. I think they'll take 3 to 5 years to get to the Pro machines. There's just a lot more complexity there. And there's a lot of apps that are a lot harder to update. It's one thing to update a business app that is not fully utilizing the hardware. And it's also for those business apps, it's easier to run them in some version of emulation without the user feeling it.
There is some evidence that Apple doesn't care about the third-party apps. So I'm going to say it's going to be faster than you think. I bet there's a very fast Mac Pro-ish device that is running ARM Final Cut, ARM Logic, like Apple's own Pro apps. What do they care about the others? Historically, they don't care. They thumb their nose at Adobe.
They do. Not really. They give Adobe a lot of warning, and when Adobe drags his feet to some degree, Apple says, "Okay, we're going to moving forward." But they've given a lot of time to Adobe to get some of those things done. And I think that there is Apple is definitely not. You can't. You don't want to have another Final Cut 10, kind of thing where you go, okay, we're just going to change, and you end up with a lot of professionals, throwing a lot of shade on you, and I don't think that they need that, and there's no reason for that. I don't think that there's any reason for them to move any faster because it's a lot of complexity. The easiest thing to do is test on, again, typical business users. Let them figure this stuff out while you can run that stuff and emulate. You can run Excel and emulation all day. No one's going to notice. You can run a lot of the productivity apps all day with no one's going to notice. But I think that you start running Photoshop, Maya, Cinema 4D, those types of things. People are going to start noticing the performance.
Aren't those all GPU bound though? More.
Some of them are, but some of them are doing heavy processing. And again, I think that it's, I don't think Apple, I don't think that they need to. I think that the big advantage that I see with ARM is that as a developer, you're going to be able to develop applications that run. It's going to be easier to run the Catalyst type, situations where I'm going to write an app that runs on the phone, it runs on the iPad, and it runs on the Air. Let's just say, that's the first place where that makes a lot of sense for the developer and for the user to have, something that's going to easily run and have a unified interface. And theoretically, I think that this is where we would probably see laptops that you can touch their screen. So I think that this is where we're going to probably see touch interfaces on the laptops is the ARM based ones, is where we're going to see that, where they're not going to do it on the heavier machines. But I think that in 3 to 5 years, I think it makes sense to unify the code base and unify the hardware, but I don't think they're going to do it. I think that you're going to give developers a lot of warning. It's a big shift. There's no reason to go any faster.
Yeah, but that's the kind of opportunity that I'm speaking of, that even if Apple is absolutely sticks to its dogmatic approach towards, hey, there is no such thing as a touchscreen on a Mac, even if they just simply took the form factor of the iPad, created a MacBook Air or MacBook Helium, something lighter than there, that is super, super thin, super, super long battery life, docks into a Magic Keyboard, and is simply a Mac that could be docked into a Magic Keyboard when you're on the go, and then pulled out of that, then dropped into a desktop dock, like an old Duo, and give you a more liberal array of ports. That would be incredible, because I am in the position right now where I have to update a lot of things. I have to update my laptop right now. I also have to update my desktop right now, which means that I'm really looking for a holistic altogether sort of plan. And if Apple were to create a computer like that, where I would have that sort of ultra portability that now I rely on with my iPad or with my Google Pixel Chromebook, but I could also use it for real Mac stuff, I wouldn't particularly care that buying that plus the Magic Keyboard would cost me $1,200 or $1,300. It would be such a beautiful solution to that problem. I wouldn't even care that it's an ARM. But the difficulty is going to come when you have people who who need something that is way above an iPad, way above essentially a Chromebook with a V8 on it. There are people who use Excel to run really, really complex models, and the difference between needing 30 seconds and needing 5 seconds is a really, really big deal. The thing that I fear is that Apple is going to create a new platform that is going to be great for not even 80 or 90% of the users, but great for only 80 or 90% of what people do. And all of a sudden, 10% of what you do on a Mac is going to be utter hell for at least 3 or 4 or 5 years. And I hope that's not the result, but it's a really complicated transition they're planning here, and their goal is going to be to make sure that the users don't notice as much of a difference at all.
Yep.
Well, all right, we'll see. I think there's probably no technical reason they couldn't do it faster. It really comes down to market considerations. I don't think they'll ever do touch on a desktop. I think that they want to keep touch on the iPad, because that's where it properly belongs. They're making the iPad more and more of a computing system. I expect them to put a lot of energy into iOS and iPadOS. And the Mac is really going to be for pros, which means they don't have to move along that fast. But I think there's some advantage to using momentum and moving quickly. They also are not happy with Intel. And I don't think they want to do one more day making computers around Intel's crappy chips.
Yeah, I think that they're going to. I just think that for the heavier Pro apps, it's going to be a big lift, and it's going to take a long time.
And to rewrite those, you think?
Yeah, it's going to be really hard. And so, and for a lot of these Pro apps, you can't. It's going to be hard to emulate them as well and still get the performance. You can't, for instance, you can't really run a lot of these apps in parallels or in those types of things, because so that emulation isn't going to be a great experience for the user. So I think that's going to take a little bit of time, but I do think that over the next year of having an Air able to do a lot of those things, I think makes sense. I'm also really interested in seeing AR. I'm interested in the thing that I'm most excited about, and I think it could largely be something that I see what's possible, and I'm hoping that they do it, as opposed to knowing whether they're going to do it or not. And that's I think that USDZ is the most exciting thing that Apple's working on. I mean, it could change many, many things. We've been talking about a unified 3D platform to deliver assets for 2 decades at least. And so if they actually get to a point where they can reach critical mass, and that means the possibility of having a media container that is a 3D model. So I want to add something as a developer, or if I want to add, and as a user, I want to add something that being able to add a 3D model to your Pages document or your Keynote document or your Word document, as easy as you can add it to as a movie or a still or anything else. That's what the possibility of 3D USDZ is that it's the OS is taking all that conversion and all that display. And we saw bits of that in QuickDraw 3D a long time ago inside of QuickTime, but that all went away as QuickTime was gutted. And so the possibility of having USDZ as this format, if you can imagine, and then if you combine that with the LiDAR that people barely understand what that LiDAR is for, so it doesn't make sense yet. So hopefully WWDC is going to make sense of that for us to some degree, of all the things that being able to do not only scene capture, but asset capture. So I have an object that I want to put as a 3D object into my Pages document or in my Keynote that I want to be able to rotate around. What if I could just pick up my iPad and rotate that object in front of my iPad real quickly and have a 3D model and then pop it into my Keynote and be able to rotate it around as I show it to folks? And that's not science fiction. That is the kind of thing that could be very well possible. Or email someone a 3D model, after I shot it with my iPad, or eventually other hardware. And so I think that there's a lot of opportunity there to just change the way we think about a lot of documents. I think that as we see, a lot of iBooks flowing into Pages, there's a lot of opportunity to build really interesting documents that right now lowest common denominator solutions like PDF and ebooks have not been able to really capture, that Apple could still, I think. I never thought I would say that 10 years after they started it, they might actually come back to it and be able to redefine the format.
You saw that they're killing iBooks.
Yeah. But it's because Pages has almost everything.
Pages does it all. Yeah.
It doesn't.
I'm actually hotter about them killing iTunes U. That one peeves me. But that's not for another year and a half. So
but I think that there's opportunities there to really change the way we learn.
I wonder,
and the way we send stuff to people.
I wonder if Apple's worried about blurring the lines between iPad OS and Mac OS.
I think they're encouraging it.
They want it to blur.
Yeah, I think they need it to blur. Yeah.
So that ultimately there'd be one platform.
This is
not not ultimately one platform, but to make a less messy pair of platforms for themselves. I think that ultimately they want the iPad, the iPhone, and a Mac to go together about as well as an iPhone and an Apple Watch. They want these things to be considered to be almost the same device with the same experiences between the two, even if the operating systems that underlying each of them has certain things that is optimized for one task and not the other. So I would be very, very surprised if they ever consolidated it down into macOS, like a Greek name, Macqua, brand of Greek yogurt. But I do think that we're going to see more restrictions being put on what you can do on a Mac. With the perceived benefit being that your Mac will work more intimately with your iPad, and the experience of one is going to be easier to transfer to the other.
There's a interesting post from famed Apple leaker Fudge on Reddit. He actually tweeted the ARM MacBook future is coming maybe sooner than people expect, but his timeline actually is fairly slow. He says 4 stages. I don't know if he knows anything or he's just predicting. Starting around, well, this says 2015. Oh, I guess he means it's already started because the T1, T2 chip. We're already in it.
Yeah.
Release of the T1 chip MacBooks, then the T2 chip MacBooks. Release of at least one lower-end ARM MacBook. That would be maybe this year or next. And then transitioning the full lineup to ARM around 2023 to 2025. So he also is talking a 3 to 5 year. And it's not saying anything we actually haven't all said in some form or fashion. So it's a long read, but maybe worth reading to clarify.
And I think that's the pace that it would make the most sense. I mean, whether he's right or not, I think that the 3 to 5 year pace of constantly updating those things and giving developers plenty of time to work on their development and selling it. I mean, this only happened on the Mac platform a couple times, and so it's a big jump that needs to be done very carefully.
And I think arguably a bigger jump than PowerPC, Motorola to PowerPC, maybe the same size as PowerPC to Intel, which by the way happened within a year. That happened really quickly.
Well, that was moving the hardware. This is moving the OS. I mean, yeah, it is. Yeah. I mean, this is really changing the OS, completely. So it's really moving from the Mac OS to Mac OS X.
10. Yeah, that's what I was going to say too. It really is absolutely that fundamental.
More than moving to Intel was.
I would say so. I mean, I do think this is going to be a painful one, and I don't. It's also going to be really, really difficult for again people like me that it kind of sucks to be in a position where you feel as though naturally it's time for me to spend several $1,000s on a new desktop.
Yeah, you don't want to do it
now, do you? Knowing. I at least want to hold off for at least a year to see what their timetable is, and if it's going to be as painful.
Well, you might know Monday. They might.
No, exactly.
And maybe they'll make it really clear what their timetable is, and like say, by 2025 we will have all Macs on ARM.
The other side of this is careful because this is the risk of Osborning yourself too, right? If you say, we're gonna have, it'll be 2 years we'll have Mac then in ARM, and then Andy's not going to buy a computer for 2 years.
I don't think that Apple suffers from that though, because if that were true, every single year people wouldn't buy a new Mac because they're waiting for the next one. So I don't think Apple fits in that same
That's a good point.
ideology. Yeah. We expect to buy new Macs all the time.
Right.
The pressure is a little lower as well because of the amount of Apple's revenue that's based on their the Mac. Mm-hmm. It's just they can do this with a little less risk because it's a pretty small percentage of their income.
Mm-hmm. It was Jean-Louis Gasset who brought up the Osborne effect in his Monday note. And that is, but I think you're right. I think, Lori, you're right that Apple is not as sensitive to that as other PC manufacturers.
I mean, it's a good thing to wonder, but that's the same thing as, will the iPhone 10R cannibalize the iPhone 10 lineup? Well, clearly it didn't. So every time you use like sort of market standards for what you think Apple does wrong, they seem to overcome that, and they just fit in a different world. And when it comes to tech and what we do and don't buy,
I think you're absolutely.
I think you're gonna have some.
The other risk that Apple is falling into, though, is that, and again, I'm using myself as an example here, that I'm no longer in the world where I have to buy one computer to do everything for me. And so as I'm considering what do I want to do for my mobile solution, what do I want to do for my desktop solution, what do I want to do for my ultra mobile solution, part of it is that if I'm left with a lot of confusion about when I will be able to buy a desktop class, like a Pro, a powerful grade desktop Hackintosh for my Photoshop work, for video editing work, for any 3D modeling work I might want to do, I might decide that, well, let's at least throw Windows 10 devices like an AMD CPU device, desktop into the mix, because I've already long ago sort of switched ever since Apple pulled Aperture out from under me. That was like, okay, well, now I sort of have to use Lightroom because it's the only thing that will do an Aperture sort of thing for me, which means that now I'm using Lightroom and Photoshop, no problem moving there. I'm already using like an open source video editor that runs on any platform I want. The modeling program, again, any platform I want. So I'm actually, for the super powerful desktop solution, I'm perfectly free to move to Windows if I want to. I don't want to, but if I do want something that's going to last me 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years, unless Apple really explains to me as a consumer, here is if you need an iMac Pro or a like a $2,000 outfitted Mac Mini, here is the day that you're going to be able to buy an AMD processor back machine with those kind of specs.
Steven Sinofsky, who has a checkered reputation since he was the author at Microsoft of Windows 8 and left after that debacle. But he also has some experience with operating systems and porting and all of that stuff. He actually says an interesting thing. It was a long tweet storm, but he said the real conundrum is, do you keep Cocoa and the Cocoa APIs at all? Do you keep macOS at all? Do you say that he says the Cocoa APIs are already at end of life? Any vendor with a Cocoa app is already focused on some combination of iOS and the cloud and is essentially milking their existing Mac apps as part of a larger service. I don't know if that's true. Certainly not true for, well, maybe it is for Adobe. You think it is? He says that's very similar to Win32, the situation we had 8 years ago. The cost to a big ISV to move an existing Cocoa app to iOS is well known. Now, Cocoa and iOS are close, but then there's all those pesky things like the interaction model, background processing, overrun design of the app, and, of course, keyboard and mouse. So the challenge, he thinks, is do you abandon macOS, in effect? Are you saying we're going to do something new and it's not Cocoa? In which case, Alex, you're absolutely right. That's a much bigger move than the hardware move.
I think it's coming. I mean, I think, again, when we look at a 3 to 5 year turn,
that could
5 years down the road, I think that you're on a unified, which some of us have been saying from get-go. I mean, they're going to unify, all of this operating system eventually. How long it takes to get there is the question, but not whether they're going to do it. It doesn't make sense to keep on supporting multiple platforms over time, but it's just a matter of giving developers enough time to, well, I guess I would say either give developers enough time to sort it out or make sure that the same services are available on that platform. So, I mean, like for instance, as an example, Affinity Photo, is not Photoshop, but it's I use Affinity Photo 80% of the time now, as opposed to Photoshop. And I started using Photoshop almost 30 years ago.
That's really interesting. Wow.
And so it's just faster and quicker, and I can have it on more machines, and I don't have to.
You use it on iOS, right? You're not using it on Mac.
No, I use it on the Mac.
Oh, you do? Oh, okay.
But it's going to port really easily, whereas getting Photoshop over is a lot more weight. And so
starting from scratch is easier, isn't it?
It is, and that's the advantage for instance, that Final Cut has, is that it doesn't have a lot of old code. it's now gotten to a point where it's pretty mature, and it's a lot more modern than its competitors, and so it'll be able to kind of move along with this process.
I'd be sad for that for one reason, but that's just my use case, which is that macOS is essentially a Unix, and I will miss that. But I don't think that there's much room for the command line or Unix apps in an ARM world. Maybe there is.
Remember that OS 10 is OS 10 everywhere, and now iOS has OS 10 at its core. We just have never had a terminal for it, and it would be a significant step. I mean, in terms of announcing what the future of the Mac is, if Apple suddenly said, "No, you don't get to have a terminal."
Yeah, that would.
Every person who uses
that would be really sad.
Yeah, that would lose me.
And Alex, with respect, my friend, my brother from another mother, you have been predicting for a long time that there's going to be unification of macOS and iOS. You might be right, but you can also predict that one day North America and South America will be separate continents, and eventually you will be right about that as well. I think that for the foreseeable future, there is no advantage to
You mean
Apple
separate land masses? They obviously are separate continents.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, sorry. Great.
No, but your point is excellent. Plate tectonics is in Alex's favor.
Exactly. The law of entropy means that at some point we will all be running the same operating system because it's all going to be the same temperature.
It's Grey Goo.
Fundamentally, it never made sense.
What I'm getting at is that there's always going to be a distinction between the sort of app that you run on a phone and on an iPad and the sort of thing that you sit down at a desk in order to use.
Certainly, but that doesn't mean you need different operating systems to do that.
Well, we're
just different interfaces.
Well, that's what we have right now. We all have OS 10.
That's right. Why would we
underneath all our device? Our device. iOS has extra things that the Mac doesn't need. The Mac OS has extra things that iOS doesn't need, including like a big pile of I/O. Think about how few devices that an iOS device can actually connect with versus a MacBook can connect to just about everything. I just don't see the advantage for Apple to say that, oh, by the way, you've just bought a copy of, again, whatever really great photo editing app. Realize that it's going to look and work very, very differently on this device than it is on this other device. Why claim that they're the exact same devices if you're going to give people two really, really big experiences? And how can you create a version of iOS that works as well on a 4K screen and two other screens next to it as it will be expected to run on iOS running on a little 5.7 inch screen? I just don't see it.
But I think that the thing is that there's essentially 4 OSs, right? Or there may be more, but there's 4 major OSs, and 3 of them are all some version of iOS, right? So you've got iPad, iPhone, TV. And watch. So there's 5. So those are all iOS that all have different things that they can and can't do. The only one left out is Mac. So the thing is that you can't run the watch and the TV and the iOS and iPad there are apps on the iPhone that won't run on the iPad. There's apps on the iPad that won't run on the iPhone. So it's not, but they are much more unified code base than Mac. So Mac is that one that's left out that is very different than the other 4. So it makes sense at some point to drag that one, into the fold, and so I think that the trajectory isn't new. I think I will argue the trajectory to go that direction is probably at least 10 years old, to move into that. And so, but it's just that it takes an enormous amount of lift to get all the planets to align to move that over. And I think next week we're going to see the more external step towards that process.
Okay. I just disagree. And that's all we have to say.
Well, we're going to find out. And in about 6 years, one of you is going to buy the other a lobster dinner.
I would buy Andy a lobster dinner no matter what.
Anyway.
So
I would try. And I can afford clam cakes and a bowl of New England clam chowder. Not maybe not lobster, but.
Go ahead, Larry.
The question that comes to my mind is, what would an iOS on a Mac look like? Because what we're envisioning right now is something that's like what we see on our iPad, but instead it's on our Mac, which is absolutely untenable. Like you can't have your desktop experience be the kind of things where, you have icons on your home screen instead of just, documents that you can drag and drop there or, different things like that. But I guess a lot of it depends on what it means to transition macOS to iOS, or obviously there'd be like some sort of separate naming scheme that wouldn't be iOS because it's iPhone and iPad. But if Apple were able to like integrate the iOS operating system into Mac, but keep everything that's familiar and comfortable about using a desktop, because the biggest problem with turning your Mac into an iOS device is that you can't run it the same way, and there are just too many things that we need to do on our desktop computers that you can't do on an iPhone or an iPad. So in what we have today absolutely couldn't be done on a Mac. But maybe if there's a way that their future combinations could meld in some of iOS with some of macOS, and this is just another iOS operating system that has a lot of extra features, just like what you're talking about. Mm-hmm. I still think I'm on Andy's side with this. I still don't think this is going to happen.
I think that the issue is that, you know, when you see mice and keyboards being supported so freely on the the iPad, those appearing now provide app developers with a new way of interacting with folks that wasn't available when it was touch. So a lot of the stuff doesn't make sense when you don't have those. When you start having those, a lot of things start to make more sense. You know, like OmniGraffle, I can't use on the iPad. Like I can't do it with touch. You know, I'm now going to start. I've been starting to experiment with it. I use it a lot, OmniGraffle a lot on the Mac. The iPad one has not been a usable experience for me, and so I'm now starting to experiment with it with the mouse. I want it to work on the mouse. It's just that now it needs to be updated so that it works really well with the mouse. So as we start to have apps get updated to take advantage of some of the new tools that Apple's giving them, we start really closing the gap between those two operating systems. Where the iPad's going to be able to do more. In many ways the macOS will be able to do more. But I don't think that, again, I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow. But I think that there's some point where the macOS doesn't make any sense anymore. We may call that, but it's going to look. It's just going to be another flavor. Again, it will still be distinct. It will still have its own tools and its own display systems and probably some of its own libraries. But I think that they're all going to be part of the same family. I would guess within 5 years.
That'll be a problem for our Bumblebee overlords, I think.
Is that coming soon? By the way, whatever happened to the murder wasps?
Soon enough.
Whatever happened to those?
What did happen to them? They went and murdered someone else.
Oh, dude.
I hate it.
We're good. We're good here.
I hate it when they start something in an episode and then they just drop it before the season ender. It's crazy. We got
like a Marvel movie.
Yeah. Murder wasps. Some updates to the hardware. The Apple 16-inch MacBook Pro gets the new Radeon Pro 5600M. Is that good, Alex? I don't know.
Still not an NVIDIA.
Yeah, still not an NVIDIA.
That's all I got. Everything Apple does in that area, I just look at it like, well, it's not an NVIDIA card.
Apple
so whatever they want to do
is now offering user-installable Mac Pro. I misread this at first and thought it was iMac Pro, but no. Mac Pro SSD kits up to 8 terabytes for $2,800. They're getting little minor things out of the way as they prepare for Monday, I think, as often is the case with Apple. They did also confirm the rumor that you were going to be able to get 0% financing on your Apple Card plus 3% cash back on a number of Apple products.
Which I do think is interesting leading up to WWDC, because we kind of always assume that you won't be buying anything from WWDC. And every once in a while, they'll do something like a new version of a Mac or, HomePod or something like that. But putting this offer out right before WWDC, it makes me think, what is coming?
Me too. I didn't realize this, but my iMac Pro is almost 3 years old now. Honey.
Hint, hint.
Hint, hint. Damn it, I bought that Traeger grill instead. Damn it.
Oh, no. My iMac, my basic iMac, it's not an iMac Pro. It's more than 5 years old, and it runs super great. But
I know.
Yep.
I'm ready. If there's a new design, if there's, like mostly bezel-less screen or something like that, I am ready to upgrade. It's fine.
This is exactly why Apple doesn't have to worry about the Osborne.
Yes, right.
What do you got? We'll take it.
Yeah. Pretty much.
I love the fact that I'm streaming to you right now from a 2012 Mac Mini. And yes, it's an i7 with lots of horsepower behind it, but the fact that it's a perfectly usable machine, even 8 years later, is a real testament to what Apple does. So I'd be more than happy to buy another Apple desktop.
I like the design language we've seen, and by the way, it's a little more confirmed now because I think there's some icons in iOS 14 as well with this bezel-less iMac or small bezel iMac. So
I think XDR would be cool on an iMac.
Really?
But that would make it so though. Yeah.
Could they make it less?
I need it to be reasonably priced still.
Yeah. Yeah, the iMac Pro is very expensive. Actually, I love my iMac Pro, and I'm not anxious to change it. I don't feel like it's any slower or anything. But although now that I have Zoom and Big Blue Button and all that crap installed on it, I just want to wipe the drive off and start over. I can't wait till COVID's over so I can throw out Zoom.
Yep.
But come on my show first.
Thank God for
I'll come on your show
drives.
first. Yeah. All right. I think we're going to see a new iMac. Will we see a new Apple TV on Monday?
I would have thought that if they were going to put out a new Apple TV, like something big and different, it was going to happen last fall or last March when they talked about, all the new stuff coming to TV Plus, and they didn't do it last year.
Right.
So I think if we see anything, it's just going to be a refresh. It's, slightly faster processor, blah, 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 a little boring stuff. It's not going to be a complete overhaul.
What about a developer kit with ARM in it? Some special.
That is absolutely possible. In fact, some of the rumors that have coming out about the new iMac that may or may not happen, one of the possibilities is that it's a ARM Mac for developers. That's
or a dual processor something.
It's definitely a possibility, and if that's the case, we won't get that new iMac with the pretty bezels this year.
Right.
I do think a Mac Mini that was just that ran on ARM would be incredibly useful for developers. Just that
right.
We're not going to promise anything. We're just releasing this. It's got ARM. You can start working on it. That gives you a computer, a base state to, or a reference, to start working against.
There's a precedent.
Could be a really interesting possibility.
They've done that before, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but for the Intel transition, they seeded a lot of developers with Intel-based Macs. The first time I used one, as a matter of fact, was at the Mac Hack conference.
It was in a Power
during the
it was in a Power Mac case, and there was $1,000, and you had to send it back. I'm reading the John Gruber story about it. You had to send it back by the end of 2006, but then you got a first generation Intel iMac in return. So they did that with the Intel transition.
Could they do it with virtualization on an Apple server? Do you think that as a method of testing, could Xcode build it and then run it remotely on a locally virtualized machine that's actually running on an Apple server somewhere?
I think so. Absolutely.
We're seeing that.
We're seeing. I mean, look, if you can play high quality, high frame rate video games off a server. I see no reason why you couldn't do Mac ARM emulation.
But from what Alex said, what I would love to see is I've already talked about one dream ARM Mac being a thin tablet, even if it's not multi-touch. Just the ability to have this super light, super MacBook Helium would be a big win. If Apple, because of the thermal profile of lower thermal profile of an ARM processor, if they could put a Mac Nano inside an Apple TV size box and reduce the price further, it would be, if they could find a way to get back to, I think wasn't the lowest price for a Mac Mini originally $500, or am I
think it did start at $499. I think you're right.
Yeah.
Yep.
If they could create one that is still wonderfully usable for games, wonderfully usable for what most for, let's say, 80% of what most Mac users would want to do. And as a second Mac or as a starter Mac, that would be a hell of a product. I don't know if Apple would be willing to sabotage their higher price points for it, but that would be such a super interesting product, especially in a world where you can buy pretty good Intel machines for Nooks for about $200 or $300 or $400.
I mean, the current, absolutely, the current Apple TV has plenty of power to do a lot that the average person needs to do on a day-to-day basis. If they put that out there, I could see a lot of people doing it.
Especially if they locked it to the App Store. If they said that there is absolutely no way you can run unsigned apps on this, everything you run has to be accessed through the App Store. And Apple now has, let's say a year from now, even tighter restrictions that make sure that the APIs that everyone is using are optimized for what Apple perceives as the future. That could be a super, super hot idea.
I think you'd see people putting those little Apple TVs everywhere if they were able to do that. I mean, because that's what we use. We use Mac Minis for little little servers and little things that they do, and all kinds of glue. And at $200 or $300 piece of glue would be amazing. We would, and I think that it would be a huge boom for app developers, even if it's all inside of
really interesting.
The App Store. It'd be super exciting.
The big difference, you'd have to put in a lot more RAM, right?
Maybe. I mean, there's still a lot of apps that'll. Yeah. Those games are doing a lot. Those games are doing a lot on that machine. I mean, I watch what my kids are playing. They love Apple Arcade, and so I think they have almost all the games they're playing through, and they, those are pretty. I look at it as someone who used to work on games. Like, wow, that's a lot to put into a little box. So.
I wonder how much of that actually is server side. Come to think of it, because there's it's obviously a lot of libraries, right, that developers are using, because there's a certain common look. I wonder. That's an interesting question. How are they getting those games on that Apple TV? Server side, you think? They sneakily do.
I think it's a mixture. I think it's loading. I don't think it tries to hold the whole, more than one level at a time.
Well, that's for sure.
So I think that it's. So I think that it definitely a lot that I don't think it's doing really server side gaming like Google is. I think it's still loading assets.
You know what? This ARM transition is going to be the end of boot camp.
Yeah,
true.
Right?
How many people are actually using it though now?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, they had to do boot camp before.
Right.
Now I don't know if they do. And Windows on ARM is probably awful.
I think that I'd be surprised if
it's the end of
you can run Windows on ARM. Yeah. Not just boot camp. I think it'd be.
Well, I don't think Microsoft sells it. They actually have Windows on ARM, but it's so slow. But of course, it's running on Qualcomm chips. I don't know. Apple might be.
And also, there's a huge expense in making sure all the drivers are updated and work on.
I'm sure they'd
boot
love
camp.
To let go.
Exactly. Yeah. It was a great value add for the Intel transition, because now you could sell people who wanted a MacBook but were only allowed to buy a Windows laptop for work, or they had that one instance which they had to use a MacBook for work. It was a great way to sell people a MacBook that you couldn't sell before. Now I think people are just buying MacBooks because they want MacBooks.
Our show today brought to you by Worldwide Technology. If you're an enterprise, if you have technology, are you in the cloud? Do you have enterprise security? Do you have enterprise servers in on-prem or in the cloud? You probably know about WWT. If you don't, you really need to. And you need to know about WWT's Advanced Technology Center. It started in one rack in one building 10 years ago. It has grown it's in multiple buildings now, many, many racks, more than $500 million of equipment. The reason for the ATC is they've got all the OEMs in there. So their engineers can spin up proofs of concept, pilots, learn how stuff works, show how stuff interacts. It's pretty darn cool. $500 million of equipment from hundreds of OEMs and key partners, ranging from heavyweights like NetApp and Cisco and VMware to the emerging disruptors that are changing everything like Tanium and Equinix and Expanse. It is, we visited, it was actually the last trip before COVID hit. Lisa and I went out there in early March, and
I was out there. It was amazing.
Wasn't that incredible?
Yeah, like
I forgot. Yeah, you were with us. Yeah.
Yeah, we were. They have a whole like node. It's like they have the cloud in a little box.
Yeah, like our clouds over
box, there. A giant building.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was stunning to visit.
It's really neat that they think that way because, and the other thing, there was other things like they have distribution centers all over the world, of course, because they're a global company. They're out of St. Louis, but they have customers all over the world. But unlike other enterprise vendors, they integrate it all before they ship it to you. So I was watching they have cameras, on the fulfillment floors, and I was watching. I said, "What's that guy doing?" I said, "Oh, he's the carpenter." Every single distribution center has a full-time carpenter in there building custom crates for shipping, because when you buy from WWDC, they integrate it all, they get it all working, and then they have a custom special shock absorber crate they ship it to you in, so that all you do is open it up, plug it in, it's good to go. It's little things like that blow me away. WWT operates at a scale I've never seen anything like it before. They do everything. App development, analytics, cloud services. They're the best consultants in the world because they know everything. And this ATC, you're going to want to be able to use it. And by the way, you can. I'll explain that in a second. They actually, I'll tell you now. Well, I'll keep it a secret. They actually not only use it themselves for their proofs of concept and pilots, they started this last summer, on-demand, schedulable labs that you can try 24/7 from anywhere in the world. You don't have to come to St. Louis. Although, if you do, try the toasted ravioli. It's fantastic. They have on-demand and schedulable labs like NetApp Cloud Volumes on Tap. They have on tap on Flash, NetApp Disaster Recovery as a Service. Hundreds of labs representing the newest advances in everything. I mean, not just storage, but multi-cloud, hyper-converged infrastructure, cloud data management, security. This lab as a service is so cool. It's a dedicated lab space within the ATC where you can perform your own programmatic testing. And that $500 million worth of equipment, it's all available to you. And you can do it anywhere in the world. I think this is wonderful. This is what WWT's engineers use. You can use it too. And it's more than just labs. I mean, this platform creates a multiplier effect of knowledge, speed, and agility anytime, anywhere around the world for WWT customers. You get the labs, but you also get access to articles and case studies. You can actually go there right now, wwt.com/twit, and start learning, wwt.com/twit. Enterprise technology moves so fast, and so much is at stake, especially now, that if you're a hospital, they have lots of healthcare clients. You're dealing with a whole new world. They can help you. They've got the tools to make a difference in the very fast-moving, high-stakes world of enterprise computing. To learn more about WWT, the ATC, and someday I hope you get to go to St. Louis and see it, but you don't have to now. WWT.com/twit. Create an account, set up some on-demand labs, and learn. WWT is the kind of partner you want. That's why their customers stay with them year after year after year, many for more than 10 years. WWT.com/twit. Worldwide technology, delivering business and technology outcomes around the world. We're big fans. We did a panel. I forgot you were out there for the panel, Alex.
Yeah,
we did fun.
I was super impressed.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun, and I just like, who are these guys?
I know, I'd never heard of them. And they had the AV setup alone. It was perfect. They had everything. They had a beautiful auditorium. You came in while we were getting the tour, and they had the big screen, and they have cameras everywhere. It was amazing. Yeah. I was blown away.
Really amazing.
Yeah. Yes, I will be on office hours. I don't know what I'm going to talk about on Thursday.
It's like I don't. We were talking about it this morning. I really see it as kind of a reverse triangulation. I get to interview you. So it's
I can do that.
Yeah. Yes. So what'll happen is that the second hour, you don't have to think about it too much, because you get there's a couple minutes that you and I will talk, and we'll talk a little bit about how you got to where you're at and how you approach things, and then the audience really just takes over. So then there's just a lot of questions, and so they'll just start asking questions, and we call it the pit. So you don't
can't wait to get in the pit.
Yeah.
I'll wear a helmet. bit.ly. It's a Zoom call. bit.ly/capital THE, capital OFFICE, capital HOURS.
I had no idea. Like, I just made it easier to read. I didn't realize that it was case sensitive.
It's camel case.
I was like,
the office hours.
Like I had no idea. So anyway.
Please, I'd love to talk to you and see you, and I'll be there.
It's gonna be great.
I got my A7s. I got the little dummy batteries. I got the tripods. I'm ready. I got my A10 mini. I'm gonna be ready.
Oh, excellent.
I'm gonna be ready for you. All I need is lighting.
It all started at a 5,000 watt radio station
that's pretty
in
much.
Fresno, California.
I'm Ted. Ted. What is his name?
Ted Baxter.
Ted Baxter. That's me. Hello, Mer.
Hi guys. Mer.
It was so broad. We're talking about the Mary Tyler Moore Show, and but it was so broad. But I guess it was, that's how we liked it in those days. Now
She could turn the world down with her smile.
Yes, she could. She was Lori Gill before Lori. Do you ever wear a little beret, Lori, and just spin around and throw it in the air? You ever do that?
Of course, Minneapolis is kind of a different place to spin around.
It's a different place now, isn't it? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's for sure.
Might want to be careful as you're spinning around. Yeah. Watch for the rubber bullets. Apple, the big reopening is starting. Scares the pants off of me, but not the mask. Not the mask. I may be going around pantless, but I'm never going around maskless.
The question is going to be, how are they going to deal with the jerks? How are they going to deal with all the people that are going to say that? Yeah, exactly. Well, I have a mask. I also need. I'm fine. Are they?
Micah's significant other works at Starbucks, and they wear masks, and they require customers coming in the store to wear a mask. Guy says no, and he says, "I'm sorry, you can't come in. You have to wear a mask to come in." He said, "I'm going to cough on you," and he coughs on him.
Yeah.
It's like, why are people such jerks?
Yeah.
What the hell? Wear a mask. It's not such a big deal. In fact, they're kind of nice. No face recognition works anymore.
Yeah.
It's great.
No one knows.
If you live in a place like Sacramento,
right.
It's good for allergies too.
Oh man, we need them here.
Yeah.
So Apple will be reopening 70 plus stores in the U.S. and Canada this week, and yes, there'll be a questionnaire when you come to the store. Are you feeling okay? Any temperature or sniffles? Taste this hot dog. Can you taste the mustard? That kind of thing. There are employees and customers will have temperature checks. Face coverings are required. Social distancing. They're going to limit the number of people who come in. They're doing everything right. Yeah.
All I can think of is just some Apple employee going, "Taste the mustard. Taste the mustard.
Can you taste that?
Taste the mustard.
Is this mustard or ketchup? What do you think?
Phone.
Close your eyes. Close your eyes. Hot dog or not hot dog?" Actually, as of today, 154 of Apple's 271 stores in the U.S. have reopened. 365 stores around the world are open. They've done, a pretty good job of drop off and pickup, curbside. My iPhone needed to be fixed. I just shipped it to them. That worked fine. It was very quick. But I guess why reopen? Because people have to see the stuff or something.
There's a lot of service issues. There's service issues. There's people who do want to get something faster than Apple's ready to send it to them. I mean, I think there's a bunch of reasons to go ahead and open it if you're within a, if you can do it carefully.
I also think that there's just a general sort of social construct of stores being open that make us feel better. And even though right now we have a lot of fear about the economy opening back up and going into stores and the dangers that come along with that, we're more comfortable when our economy is open and we'll spend more money. And maybe Apple is just kind of just going with the flow because, not everybody, but a lot of people want to open the economy back up, and the normalcy of it is a sense of comfort, even though we're afraid of it,
I think another factor is that you really want to get those employees back and getting them paid before they leave for other jobs, because they got to make money somewhere. And if you lose half of your employees and then you have to retrain half of them by the time the Christmas season rolls around, that's a super bad thing. On top of simply wanting to get your employees back to work and paying them and getting them back, making sure that they're still on health coverage and everything else that they count on. It's an odd calculus, and like I said, the only thing that I'm afraid I'm not afraid of stores being able to make sure that social distancing, make sure they're moving tables apart so that people are not going to be close together, making sure that everybody who enters wears a mask, even taking temperatures of people coming in. I'm just concerned about jerks who are going to try to make this into an untenable situation for everybody. I went food shopping yesterday, and you have to have a mask to get in, and a lot of people just seem to think that mask is simply their entrance ticket. And once they're inside with it, it doesn't matter if they wear it or not. And they're inside a grocery store.
Oh my God.
And we're not talking about like an avenue of total jerks. They're just people who seem to think that the emergency is over. Just like we're in New England, they're using the same mental software we use when there's a hurricane or a snowstorm. That, oh gosh, that was a bad one. We had to stay inside the house for 3 or 4 days while it snowed, and then it was a whole week before power got back on. But we're out of it now, and now everything's back to normal. Well, no, it isn't.
I think there was a lot of people that were impatient, to get back into it. And I think that while the protests had a lot of valid reasons for them, I think that they broke the window open. They broke that dam. And I think at this point, we're never going back. There won't be any more. I don't think we'll ever go back to stay at home, no matter what happens. Like, I just think that there's a bunch of people from not the cities that just were ready to go back to doing what they're, and a lot of them that are in the cities. We have to remember that a lot of people are. So I think that a lot of companies are taking that into account. They're going to try to do it as carefully as they can. But I think whatever we were doing to be safe, I think we want to keep doing it, and we want to keep on putting those on. But I think that we've turned a corner where we're not. I don't think that it's going to reverse. And so I think that
I don't know if the protests broke the. I think this was starting before the protests. I think just people were fed up. They were done.
People were fed up and tired of it, but it was a lot of folks that just said, "Well, if they can do it, I can do it." And once they started going back to it, they're not. I don't think we can put the bottle. I don't think we can put the genie back in the bottle. And I think that the protests had a lot of valid foundation. So I'm not saying that people shouldn't have protested. I'm just saying that once we turned that corner, it was over. And I don't think
the protest has anything to do with that, though. I'm not sure if that's what you're like, that's kind of where you're standing with that. I think if there was not a single protest that happened in the last 3 weeks, we would be in this exact same place with people
starting on Memorial Day. Yeah. I mean, I agree with you, Alex. I saw this coming. That because there was no other way, right? It was like nobody's going to put up with this for another year. It's just not going to happen.
No, I think that there's still going to be companies that don't want to put,
we're not bringing our employees back. Hell no.
Well, and also there's also going to be, I don't think we're going to see big events. And I don't think we're going to see a big. I don't think we're going to see big events, and I don't think that companies are going to fill back up to 100% in their thing. So that all I think is still going to happen. But I think as far as retail outlets, I think the problem you get into is why do you open one and not the other? I mean, why do you not have an Apple store open but have a grocery store open? I mean, the grocery store probably
because people have to eat.
Yeah, exactly.
They don't have to buy a Mac. I mean, I might, but most people don't have to buy a Mac.
But I think that for not just for Apple, but and I think Apple could afford to have this move forward. But I think for a lot of companies, I don't know. I mean, the numbers are stunning. For a small business.
Oh,
I mean,
it's
like
agree.
Half.
But that's a high price.
That aren't going to ever open.
120,000 people dead is a high price to pay, so you could sell your apples in the Apple stand. I mean,
I'm not going to argue about what we should or shouldn't do in that area. I'm just saying that I think it's more of the reality that we're probably in is that these stores are going to start to open and they're not going to close.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think it has less to do with economics. I mean, obviously for those businesses it might. But for the people going to those stores or going to those restaurants or out and about without masks, it's just, I'm done. I can't do it anymore.
Yep.
And I'm done. And if I get it, I get it. Somebody in the chat room just said it only has a 95% recovery rate. So 1 in 20 will die. Okay,
Russian roulette with a 20-round magazine instead of just 6.
I can live with that.
Yeah, I mean,
or maybe not.
I already months ago I decided I'm not even going to have any hopes of being out of lockdown before the end of June. And the way I look at things right now, I'm not making any plans for July either. And I don't know what's going to go on for the rest of the year, but there is no way you're going to get me inside a plane until at least February.
And I want to say,
there's no way in hell.
I could.
Right.
When I say this, I'm not complaining. I could do this forever.
That's the difference. We are all made to do this. This is.
Right. I'm not saying that I want to go back to it. There
are a lot of people who have to go back to work. There are a lot of people who need work, and they got to work.
Whether they want to or not.
Whether they want to or not.
They're being told they're going back to restaurants where they're telling the government that they're masking up and they're taking precautions. They get to work and they find out that they're not, and that if they don't go back and take their jobs back, they lose their unemployment because they turned down a return to work.
Right.
And how fair is that? You give up not only your health but the health of the people that you love.
Well, at the end of July, the $600 payment in the unemployment check goes away. Mortgage forbearance goes away in October. I mean, there are going to be some economic events that are going to also precipitate this. I don't know. What are you going to do? Wear a mask, folks, if you can. Please. I beg of you.
They're easy.
You're doing it for us. Really cool. I wear a mask to protect you, not...
Yeah, I'm far more worried. I'm far more concerned about being a carrier than I am getting it. I've gotten sick like twice in the last 10 years, and it was because I took a vaccine for yellow fever. So the only, so I don't really have a lot of, I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried about that I won't even notice that I'm going to be one of those ones that doesn't even notice that I have it, and I'm spreading it out. Yeah. So that's when I go out, I'm far more concerned about other people than I am myself.
That's very fair. Yeah, I always just assume everybody's sick, myself included, and act so. I like making masks. Apple is, there's a little battle going on, and I feel like I have a tiny bit of stake in this battle. You all know Jason Fried and David Hannemeyer Hansen of Basecamp fame. We've had both of them on Twit many times. Big fans. DHH created Ruby on Rails, made a little bit of money. He races his Ferraris. But they wanted to start a new email application, kind of a clever idea to try to fix the problems with email. And they decided that they wanted to call it Hey. But Hey.com was H-E-Y, not H-A-Y. H-E-Y.com was owned by somebody you might remember, Dane Golden, who for a long time was my right hand here at Twit. And I remember how much Dane loved the fact that he was Dane at Hey.com and owned Hey.com, and he built his business after he left Twit. He's built his business around it. He wasn't squatting on it. That was his brand, Hey.com. And so Jason Fried, who talks about this in the blog post, he said, I found out that Dane owned it, and I remember Dane from when I was on Twit. So they had an email back and forth. They offered him some money. Dane said, "Yeah, it's too valuable to me. It's my business, it's my brand. I'm not going to sell it to you for that." So they walked away, and then a month or two later, Dane calls and says, somebody else is trying to buy it, because I really think the world of Basecamp and Jason and David. I'd like you to at least give you the first right of first refusal. Now, I don't know how much Dane got, but Jason Fried says it was a painful amount of money.
Go Dane.
Go Dane. I'm so happy. I am so happy.
That.
I hope he's just sailing on one of those yachts out in the Mediterranean right now.
Love
right on.
that. That is so awesome.
Yeah. So really happy for Dane. I think that's great news. But there's a little trouble in paradise, because in order to make that money back, Basecamp had an idea, and I think a very clever idea. So this is going to be an email service. It's invitation only, launches next month. I immediately said, please, give me, I haven't got it yet. You can download the app, but until you get the service, you can't use it. It's on iOS and Android. They're going to make Mac and Windows. They're going to make a web version. They got it on the App Store with version 1, but then they tried to get a fix up there, 101. It was turned down. And turned down again. Apple cited the infamous Rule 3.1.1, which says if you want people to be able to buy stuff, they have to be able to buy it through the Apple payment system. Now, the way Hey.com works, it's $99 a year for the email service. If you want a 2-letter at Hey.com, if you want to be, AI at Hey.com, that'll cost you $1,000 a year. If you want 3 letters, I was a little disappointed because I would love Leo at Hey.com. And I probably could have gotten that from Dane before he sold it. But anyway, damn it, it's $350. And there is nothing in the app that lets you buy that in the app. You go to basecamp.com and you buy it there. Apple says, no, you have to do it in-app purchase. David Hennemeyer Hansen says, over my dead body. He said at first, well, we figured we got the Monday morning reviewer. So they tried again, and no. They pointed out there are a lot of other email apps like Spark and Edison that allow users to log into existing accounts without signing up through Apple. Reviewer said, doesn't matter who else is doing it, you can't. Hannemeyer says, we're not going to pay the 30% Apple tax. There's just no way we're going to do it. By the way, this ties in with the fact that Apple just announced they made that the ecosystem facilitated $500 million in sales last year.
I think it's $500 billion.
$500 billion. Pardon me, 519 billion, $500 billion,
right.
Of which Apple presumably got a third. It only took 15% of the subscription stuff. So it's going to be interesting because DHH is an immovable object, and Apple is a irresistible force. So or maybe it's the other way around. Actually, DHS is an irresistible force. That's Apple. It's the immovable object. What do you think? You got to have that iOS app, don't you?
Yeah, Apple really needs to
charging a premium. It's really hard.
Yeah. There is never in a million years a way that I am paying Apple a third of our revenues. That is obscene and it's criminal, says DHH. And I will spend every dollar we have or ever make to burn this down until we get to somewhere better.
Well, I think that's a really great, bold statement, because where does change happen? It starts with some pretty bold statements, right? So
he testified in front of Congress about the anti-competitive nature of big tech. I mean, this is not a new cause for him.
Mm-hmm. And I do think that it should be an option for a developer to choose whether or not they want to, make their subscription service available directly through the app or from a website. I don't think that they should be forced to by the phone holder or the phone maker or whatever. So, Apple says, we're just the store where people put their apps, right? That's their sort of stance. We don't own these apps. We're just the store where people put their apps, and they consign it to us. So if that's the case, then the person who's, put their app in your store shouldn't be forced to display their app the way you want it to. I'm literally thinking of a physical store, like a record store. Like, I don't go to a record store consignment and then have them, display. They don't tell me, well, the only way I'm going to consign your records is if you, put them in photo frames or something like that. They don't put limits on it. It's a way,
But in a consignment, what does the consignment store take? What percentage does the consignment store take of the sale?
That would be where, the changes could, there could be some changes that need to be made where instead of Apple requiring 30% of every purchase made or 15% of every subscription made, there could be an option where for a one-time fee, you could put your app in the App Store, or a yearly fee. You can put your app in the App Store. But
that would be like saying I've got a pile of jeans I want to sell from a consignment store. I want to pay you $100 and then make as much as I want on the jeans.
No, but the point, the consignment store is the only point of sale. In this case, Hey is set up so you subscribe to it. They just want apps on the store, just as Netflix. You pay Netflix, and then there's an app on the store. I don't see that that's an unreasonable thing. That's rent seeking for Apple. I think this is going to get Apple in a lot of trouble. Today already, there's two anti-competitive actions going on in the EU against Apple.
And the House Judiciary
Committee
is also trying to get all the CEOs, including Tim Cook, in July to talk about every single tech company's processes. Yeah. This is a really, really good time if you are a company that's really, really annoyed by Apple taking a cut of everything you do to really, really, you could be the mouse that roared. You could be exactly the sort of witness that a lot of people in a lot of really fancy boardrooms want to see right now.
I mean, I think that you might see something in the EU because they're crazy. The EU is just crazy. So they might go down some crazy path. But the problem that they're going to have is that Apple has a minority stake in the mobile phone market. If you have other places that you can go, it is not a phone. The iPhone is not a platform in itself. It is a phone platform, and Android is much bigger than it is. And so the thing is,
Hansen says if we can't have Hey on iOS, we're nowhere. We have to be on the biggest platform in this segment, and Apple knows that, so they're holding our feet to the fire. But it's the way, at least in the United States, the way that works is they really have to have at least a majority, if not. And generally, when we start talking about antitrust, we're talking about 80-90% of the market. That's where Microsoft got itself in trouble, with 80-90% of the market. How Google gets in trouble is large percentages of the market. I don't know exactly what Google's is, but it's close to that. At 40% of the market or less, it starts to become really complicated to argue that you own that market. Yeah, you have a great part of that market. You have the most profitable part of that market, but it doesn't mean that you have monopoly leverage over that market. And so the thing is that just because people don't like the business model, the argument is that you can go to the larger part of the market. Apple doesn't owe these people this. They made a better platform to make money than everyone else. It doesn't mean that they owe them now that they've built this thing that is a safer place to put your app, that's easier to sell. I mean, as someone who has built these built apps and sold them, I mean, there is no platform better than Apple's, than the iOS to sell an app, because of all the other infrastructure. You can distribute something for free. You have all that transfer, all the e-commerce, all those other things are taken that Apple has built. They've built a level of trust, with the user, that you can download these things and they're not going to cause a bunch of trouble for you later. And so the thing is that ecosystem is something that Apple built. That they don't owe anybody. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. Really, if you don't like it, go somewhere else. It is a minority part of the market. They don't owe you that. And that's the thing that just drives me crazy is that, this level of entitlement that app developers have, that they think that they can just force Apple to go do something that they have built a magnificent platform for this, and they're frustrated that nobody else can do that, because what it takes is what Apple did, and the thing is that, but it's still a minority part of the market, and you're not going to, I don't know, maybe you can persuade the next administration, the next Congress and everything else to pass something. There is no way that's going to go through the Supreme Court. The current Supreme Court, no way. You are at a pipe dream, because it's not constitutional. It doesn't make any sense. They don't own 100% of the Apple market. They own a minority percentage of the phone market. And it's just BS to say that they have their own market, I'm just sorry.
It's up to the FTC to decide that. And they could go
which will then go to the Supreme Court, who will strike it down.
I think, though, Alex, you're ignoring the harm to users. I'm not talking about necessarily the harm to Basecamp, but if I want to use this app on an iPhone, I can't, because Apple says, no, you have to give us 30% if you want to be on this platform. I think that's
Basecamp's decision.
Well, but yeah, and Basecamp is going to be on Android, but I'm an iOS user and I would like to use Hey on my phone. Apple is extraordinary in its, I think, imperial nature of what it allows and doesn't allow in the App Store. It's bizarre. It allows Spark to do this, but doesn't allow that to do it. That's crazy.
I don't think we should be having the conversation about whether or not the federal government will, claim
right
this or
wrong?
that. I think
yes.
Yeah, and it comes down to how Apple looks. It comes down to the sort of culturally. So, Apple donates to lots of amazing causes because, in part, it makes them look good. So in part, it makes them look good that they bring all this money into these app developers, and that app developers want to participate in their ecosystem. But the more app developers start feeling frustrations at the way Apple's been doing things for the last 10 years, they're not changing that, the more they're going to look bad culturally. And I think it behooves them to start looking at what they're doing now and decide whether or not there's some changes that they could make that could be a compromise to everyone, because culturally they're going to start looking bad. The more they put their, dig their heels in, the more they're going to look bad to everybody who's wanting some kind of changes.
It affects 1,000% of all the app developers, and 2% of the people actually pay attention to it. I mean, this is such a.
What about users who won't get?
Case.
What about users who won't get access to that service on iOS?
99% of the users don't know it exists, and the 99 of those left don't care.
What if it's which, by the way, it is a really cool take on email that I think they deserve access to. You say, who cares?
I just don't think most of the users care. No, it's just they're not going to care. It's some edge case. I mean, no one's, how many people really use other email, services? I mean, like how many apps? But like literally 99% of iPhone users use mail. And so it is not a, we're really, these people complaining about edge cases, and this is really an edge case. And I think that it is, I get that people have this, but there's an awful lot of app developers that are, the vast majority, that are quite happy with an ecosystem that allows them to do what they do, and there's frustrations that I have with it. I mean, I can't, the way that you want to send something for a review copy or whatever is just a disaster, inside of this platform, and there's all kinds of things that don't work. But I can say as an app developer, or someone who has been an app developer and probably will be soon again at some point in the near future, there's no other platform that has been built that way. And to have someone be able to build something up and then people just barge in and say, well, we want to do it our way. I mean, I think that by building something that takes an enormous amount of work, you have a certain level of the ability to control your own destiny, related to that. And I think that I think that people don't like it, then don't use it, and if the reason that they're upset is because they know that 90% of their revenue will come from that platform, because people don't buy things on Android.
What is your obligation? Hold on. What is your obligation to Apple if you write a Mac application and they spend a lot of money on the iMac device and they put a lot of energy into it? Don't you owe them some money for getting to ride on their platform, or Microsoft for getting to ride on Windows?
Well, if you want to do it from the app, if you want to do it in the App Store, you do. Right?
How much does it cost Apple to deliver that app? If Apple gave us a choice, but we have to use the App Store. We don't have a choice.
But again, it's as if you built a big building that happens to be really, really good at what it did, and people want to put stores in there, and you're like, well, this is what I'm not charging you rent, I'm just charging you part of your revenue. If you don't like it, go to another building.
I don't deny their right to do it. I certainly don't deny their right to do it, but I don't think it's right. I don't think it is right.
Yeah, and at some point it really, and you're right on a lot of this, Alex, that most people aren't going to care, but we're talking about it right now because some people care.
But most people aren't going to care ever.
I think it would be a good thing for Apple to just kind of pay attention, like read the room, and if the room really isn't speaking that loudly, then they can shut the door. But
if you read the room, let's be clear when we say read the room. There's 10,000 people in the room, and there's 3 people in the back that are screaming like little protesters. I mean, that is the room that Apple is dealing with right now. We can talk about it in this, but that's really the room.
This is the only thing that I wanted to say in response to all of this, that the function and the most useful role of legislators and regulators is not to verify that the happy people are happy, but to listen to the people who are unhappy and ask if they actually have a legitimate beef or not. Doesn't matter if it's just 10 people out of 1,000. If these 10 people are being ripped off, that's all
whether
I'm saying.
I don't
care. I don't care about the numbers. I don't care about the perception of how well the App Store is doing for the developer community at large. I don't care about the idea that some developers are just whining. I think that this is a legitimate question, and that if someone were to bring it up to the House Judiciary Committee, it is not ridiculous to consider that they would want to take a look at this.
I should also point out the Supreme Court was asked about this last year, remember, and Apple lost. Apple wanted it thrown out that the App Store 30% commission was an unlawful and unfair use of Apple's monopoly power.
That was a technical thing over standing, whether the person had standing to take the court. They didn't say anything about whether the 30% was constitutional.
Right.
It's just whether they had standing to bring it to court. And so that's a much different technical technical piece there. And the thing is that yes, it is there that
brick precedent.
The issue really is that on top of that, it is whether someone can be upset about the way a company is working. Do they have a constitutional right to turn that over? And I don't think that's going to stand. I don't think it's going to. They don't think they have a constitutional right to have stores work the way they want them to.
You're right.
They have and that's the issue. And I think that Apple has a constitutional right to build something.
There is a loss to end users, whether they know it or not, because this is, if you go to hey.com and read how this program works, I very much would love to have this as my email program, and I will never be able to, apparently, on iOS. And that's a mistake, I think, for Apple to make. There is the point also that there are other email programs that are paid systems through other means that Apple allows on the platform. So I'm not but inconsistently applying the rules is different from doing the wrong thing. I think they're just doing the wrong thing. But again, they have the right to do the wrong thing. I'm not denying that.
Right.
It's true. They do have the right.
Yeah. Well, and maybe, I don't know, maybe the EU will weigh in on this. As of today, 2 new EU investigations into Apple's business practices. The cut in the Apple Store is one of them. The other one is over closing NFC, keeping NFC only to Apple. Margarete Vestager, who is the head of competitive policy at the European Commission, says it appears that Apple obtained a gatekeeper role when it comes to distribution of apps and content to users of Apple popular devices. We need to ensure that Apple's rules do not distort competition in markets where Apple is competing with other app developers. For example, its music streaming service, Apple Music, or with Apple Books, or maybe Apple Mail versus, hey, she didn't say that, I did. I have therefore decided to take a close look at Apple's App Store rules and their compliance with EU competition rules. So it may not change in the US, probably won't, but it might in the EU. And Apple's probably paying attention to it. I don't know.
Oh, and it'd be the question is how long will it stretch out?
8 years from now, you'll be able to get the mail.
Well, and by the time you'll be able to get the mail, it won't exist anymore.
Right,
like who cares? I mean, mail is such an annoying thing. Email is such an annoying form of communication at this point. I think that's the other thing is that I'm like, if I have to use mail, I use it. But
that's why you should look at this, Alex. Be a little more open-minded, because if you look at hey.com, they actually solve a lot of the problems, a lot of the things you don't like about email. They solve.
The big thing I try to solve is get people to not communicate with me in email.
But what if it worked? Here's the reason I want email to work, because it's the only way people who I don't have a connection with in any other form can reach me and you. And unless you figure Twitter is your main form of communication. And I think that an email that works would be a very desirable thing. And I think it's a very interesting stab. These guys are smart. I think it's a very interesting stab at the problem. But we will never find out, because
I'm glad. I just the only thing I'm saying, I'm glad that Dane made a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think he gets to keep it regardless of what happens here.
I love that.
So about the EU investigation thing, I think the second one that's in that article about Apple and
NFC.
payment systems,
Apple Pay. Yeah.
I think that one really is a stretch and kind of leans into Alex's joke about how the EU is crazy, because they're
so crazy. It's all the time.
It's Apple Pay. It's not a closed system. You can put any one of your credit cards onto Apple Pay, right? So from the perspective of the user, it's not closed off. From the perspective of the POS companies, I guess would be the other perspective. You can use your credit card to make a payment at any payment service, any POS in any store. You don't have to use your phone to do it. So that one seems really off the mark. That seems really barking up the wrong tree. So if Apple opened up the NFC chip to other, again, I can't imagine what they'd be talking about, but other payment service systems, POSs, like Coinstar or whatever, like, like, where is that going? Like, is the implication that like Apple or that Google Wallet should be on iPhone? I don't know. Like, it seems really weird.
Yeah, and this is one where I agree with you and Alex because, hey, look, Apple put the NFC in. Again, it disadvantages us as users that we can't use it for other things. But Apple has a good reason, I think. Well, it may be anti-competitive, but it may also be for security purposes to keep the NFC mobile payments to their own service. And, they take a cut of it, so it could be about money.
But all POSs take a cut. So it's not that you're being anti-competitive because now Bank of America has to pay 15%. Like, any POS has that option. Some of them are even higher than that.
Here's what Vestager says. It's important that Apple's measures do not deny consumers the benefits of new payment technologies, including better choice, quality, innovation, and competitive prices. Now, by the way, in both cases, investigations going on. They haven't yet taken them to court. But that is always the argument, in my opinion, against any competitive measures, is it reduces innovation. It hampers somebody from doing something better or different or new.
Yeah.
Well,
I think if we wanted to improve innovation, we could do a lot more by rewriting the copyright rules, in patent law.
Oh, I agree with you on that.
Yes.
I mean, like if we want to make real change, like we're talking about minor change with Apple, we're talking about minor change. We're talking about real change that would actually benefit folks. We would start talking about twilighting copyright and, after 50 years. Crazy. And say you have to actually use your patent after X number of years, or you don't get to keep it, or, 14 years, there's a whole lot of things that could be done that would make things move a lot faster. We're held up in a home. If we want to talk about holding us up as users into homeostasis, it's copyright and patent laws.
I was going to ask you guys to take bets on how long OpenCore would be able to make and sell their Hackintosh. But when you click on the link that leads to their site, so I guess there's no reason to bet. It seems like Apple has come down on them. It was pretty cool. Professionally built Hackintosh systems running Ryzen Zen 2 processors. MacPro power at a slither of the cost, says OpenCore.
Is it me, or does that seem like it defeats the purpose of the Hackintosh, though? Like, the point is that you're building it yourself, and the joy of DIYing it. It seems like that's kind of defeats that whole purpose.
There's no way they're
right,
going to
and the responsibility of learning enough in the process that when there's a minor update to the OS that either bricks everything or you can't get, that you know how to fix it yourself. But I might be misremembering. Was it Apple that searched them, or was it the simple fact that they named the company and the product after an open source?
I don't know why they're down. Yeah.
Because that's also the name of the common open source tool for Hackintoshing a do-it-yourself DIY Intel build.
Well, somebody got mad at them.
Or maybe they sold them all and decided they had.
Maybe
to
they're out of Velociraptors.
More popular than they thought.
Maybe they're out of them. They're gone. What happens though? You can't update it, right?
Win a bet.
You just have to keep it off the internet.
It's the holy grail that is attainable is to make it compatible with software updates. But the thing is, it'll break at any moment.
Right.
It's not. There are people who've built really wonderful Hackintosh systems, but it's always with the understanding that it's working now. It might not work 6 months from now or even 6 hours from now. And if it does break, I'm responsible for trying to figure out, probably by working with the open source team, exactly what has gone wrong and how to fix it.
So every June, there is a little event that happens in China, the anniversary of Tiananmen Square, and China cracking down. In this case, 2 apps removed from Apple's China store, Pocket Casts, which is our favorite podcast, and then Cast app, and Castro Podcasts are gone from the Chinese App Store at the request of the Cyberspace Administration of China, the country's internet watchdog. Pocket Casts said, why? Why? We don't know why. Just because they told us to. That probably has something to do with Chinese language anti-government podcasts, but...
Yeah, I believe they're asked to remove specific podcasts that are anti-Chinese government, and they refuse to, and so they're gone.
Okay. Seems like they could just block the podcasts, couldn't they? In China?
It's why do that when you simply can exert control over the means of actually receiving podcasts? And you simply have to keep blocking other podcasts. It is a more orderly solution from the Chinese government's perspective to simply say, look, if you're operating a podcast catcher in our country, you are going to essentially operate it to our standards and our specifications as we require by law. So well done, Shifty Jelly. They actually, considering that they're owned by NPR and other public broadcasting concerns, it would have been a very, very hypocritical thing for them to say, sure, we'll censor ourselves, no problem. So very, very, very good on them for doing the right thing.
Yeah, and Apple, I mean, we've had this conversation a million times. Apple's going to do what the laws of the country they're in require.
You got me thinking, Andy, though. Think of first of all, I was pretty just dumbfounded that this happened at first. Like, it seems really counter whatever to what Apple has been saying for the last couple of weeks. But you just made me think of something. What if the Chinese government had gone directly to, Shifty Jelly and said, you have to censor these podcasts out, or you can't have your app in our country. So in other words, when you take Apple out of it, Shifty Jelly would have either done what China said, or they would have came to the same decision. So why is it Apple's fault that happened? Is where I'm just now. This is just now coming to me. Yeah. This train of thought, and it's actually really interesting to think of it that way when we start talking about Apple kowtowing to other governments. If we take Apple out of that situation and we go from the developer directly to the government, how does that change? It's just something I'm thinking of.
Yeah, my understanding is that once Apple receives a formal request to remove an app from the App Store, and China says here is the violation that we are citing, Apple just simply has to take it down. I believe I looked at this last week, so my memory might be fading me. I do believe that they were asked directly from China, saying we can't let your app operate inside the Cyberspace Administration of China won't allow you to operate this app unless you are going to restrict the podcast that you can get.
I don't think they were asked. So here's I'm looking at the article on TechCrunch, and there may be something later, but this is what TechCrunch said. Pocket Cast asked Apple why. Apple said, contact China directly. Shifty Jelly says, this is the quote, we'll most likely contact them to find out more, though we weren't given that option to stop the app from being removed, only as a potential solution to have it reinstated. A very small amount of warning we were given between there being a problem and our app being completely removed from the China App Store was quite alarming. We assumed that what they wanted us to remove were specific podcasts and possibly some of the Black Lives Matter content we posted, but I don't know if they know.
Yeah. Here's the threads they put on their Twitter account, Pocket Casts, on June 10th. Pocket Casts has been removed from the Chinese App Store by Apple at the request of the Cyberspace Administration of China. We believe podcasting is and should remain an open medium free of government censorship. As such, we won't be censoring podcast content at their request. Next tweet. We understand this means that it's unlikely that our iOS app will be available in China, but feel it's a necessary step to take for any company that values the open distribution model that makes podcasting special. And then follow-up, someone asked them, did you get contacted by China before the takedown, or was it just Apple pulling the plug? Pocket Casts replies, we were contacted by the CAC through Apple around 2 days before the app was removed from the store. There were no specific reasons provided, even after we asked for clarification. The overall reason, I'm quoting Pocket Casts here, the overall reason was that we, quote, include content that is illegal in China as determined by the CAC, unquote.
Right. Okay. But they didn't tell them what to take down. They just said, we're taking the whole thing down. Easier just to go to Apple and say, apparently. Apple, pull it. Yeah. Yeah, that just solves the whole thing. And you don't have to do all this complicated back and forth. Democracy is so difficult.
So inefficient.
So inefficient. Let us. I think we it'd be a good time to get the picks of the week if you folks would like to. I'm going to just throw in to begin. Last week we mentioned the itch.io bundle, the Itch.io bundle for racial justice and equality. I am very pleased to say that bundle ended up raising, their goal was $5 million, $8.1 million. Gamers are extraordinarily generous. Of course, they were getting an amazing deal because they got 1,741 independent games and other content for $5, although the average contribution was 10. And so that's pretty darn good. The money will be split between the NAACP Legal Defense and Educational Fund and the Community Bail Fund. And now, of course, Humble Bundle says, hold my beer. And this is good. This is the kind of competition you want, right? They've just started their Fight for Racial Justice bundle. This is, Itch.io is indie games. These are less indie games, much more, including Kerbal Space Program, NBA 2K20, BioShock Remastered, Age of Wonders 3. There's a lot of games in here for $30, and it goes to a good cause. So I'll just mention that you got a little less than a week to fight for racial justice with the Humble Bundle. $1,243 worth of awesome stuff for $30 or more. 100% goes to charity. So I love it. I hope this competition continues. Lori Gill, your pick of the week.
Hold on. I'm buying this Humble Bundle.
Oh, yes. It's a good bundle. I'm going to buy it, too.
I'm just kidding. I'll wait.
No, it's pretty good. Look at all this stuff.
It is.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
It is. It's great. Okay. So taking it up to a little bit of lightheartedness, I just thought these were so funny. So Casetify, they regularly launch these these collections that are special editions from different brands. And this week they launched the Heinz edition. So
wait a minute, what?
It's
ketchup?
Just so funny to me.
Oh, this is hysterical. Ketchup. It is ketchup.
They're like, I don't know.
They should be paying us for the advertising.
Yeah, but it's just so funny that you can get ketchup bottles on your iPhone case. My favorite one is actually the floaty one that has the French fries and the bottles of ketchup.
Yeah.
I really like that one a lot.
And those move around, right? That's a floaty back, so that
it'll move around. I like the French fries on that one too. So if you're a fan of Heinz ketchup, or you just think it's really funny to have a ketchup bottle on your iPhone case, Casetify is there for you.
It's National Ketchup Day. Cases. That's why you realize we've got to celebrate National Ketchup Day. Put your phone on the shelf in the grocery store. CASETIFY.com. That's
just so funny looking.
Who pays whom? Does Heinz pay them, or do they license it from Heinz? What do you think?
It's such an advertising game that I have a feeling that Heinz probably, and I'm just guessing, but Heinz probably contacts them.
I would think so, yeah. Andy Anako, you got a police scanner radio pick for us?
I got two different picks just today.
Whoa, we're in the Opera House. Holy moly.
The Metropolitan Opera uploaded a whole bunch of Zoom meeting backgrounds. Not working very well because I'm using Skype's automatic backgrounds. I don't have green screen.
Looks pretty good.
It still looks okay. I did have to take off my headphones. My headphones were even worse, and switched for my earbuds. But you got the inside of the Met Opera House. You can get the stage production of La Boheme here, or you can get the Starburst signature chandeliers. Or you can get just the lobby, the inside the Opera House here, or you could pretend to be a PBS Live from Lincoln Center presenter and get the external shot of.
That's hysterical.
I think I like that one the best.
Yeah, I like the theater. Oh man, that's nice.
These are all highly solid choices. But I do have an iOS app pick. I was looking at police scanners for the first time since I used to listen. I used to have my Uniden handheld scanner 20 or 30 years ago. And I remember that, of course, there are now phone apps that do that. There are people who have like actual terrestrial scanners. And one of the features of these police and fire and emergency scanners is that they can stream audio to the internet. And so a whole bunch of different phone apps can simply like tap into those streams. And my favorite one, it's actually available for both iOS and Android, is called Police Scanner Radio and Fire for iOS. And man, does it do a whole bunch of really, really cool things. The cool thing about it is that it's kind of boring to simply turn on your phone and say, oh, what's my local like fire department frequency? Okay, here it is. Now just stream this to me. But it can do, and you can do that. You can simply enable location access, and it will just, you can say, please show me frequency. Please show me like police, fire, emergency, and whatever that are within 25 miles of me, say. Then you can pick one and then just be listening to like your fire station long. The other cool thing you can do is you kind of are, if you're more interested in just finding out if anything important or dramatic is happening at the moment, you can have things like not only just say, show me stuff that's 25 miles away. You can say automatically tune into anything within, let's say, 30 miles of my location if the number of listeners has suddenly gone up by 200 or 300%. So if suddenly everybody is tuning into like Boston EMS, Boston Police and Fire, you can have a good idea that there's something bad going down in Boston, and maybe it's something you want to pay attention to right now. Or if you don't necessarily want to hear every single call that your fire department has about, okay, there's a cat up a tree, or there's somebody who lost their keys and they're stuck up out on the porch and they're naked, and they need someone to help them get back into the house. But if there's actually like a 2 or 3 alarm fire, and suddenly instead of like 2 or 3 people listening, there are now 14 people listening, you definitely want to start to listen to that. So it really is a lot of fun. And of course, it works nationwide. I think it even works worldwide. So if you want to simply say anywhere in the country where there's suddenly 1,000 times the number of people who are listening on something, as you can guess, last week, there were a number of highly interesting emergency channels that were where you're hearing exactly what police and EMS are talking to. There was a peaceful protest that I forget where it was, but there was a peaceful protest. I think it was somewhere in New England where it was peaceful, and the police were like reporting on how peaceful and boring it was. Where there's like, it's almost like there's a Barney Fife there who was saying, okay, they all suddenly stood up. I don't know why. And then nothing else after that. So they just, I get stretching their legs or something. So and it's a cheap app. You get the free version, I think, with ads. I think it's $2.99, and you own it without any ads. It's just a really, really handy app to have on your phone. It's in that category of, at the time when you are really, really interested to know what are all those sirens about, or there's suddenly a news flash about something bad happening and you want to get as much information as you can, it's nice to already have that on your phone and you already know how to use it. Very easy to use, but very, very handy. And also it helps you to understand exactly what kind of operations are going down inside your town, like hour to hour, day by day.
Nice. I just downloaded it. I think nowadays it's a good thing to have. You never know. Yeah. Is it legal? That's legal,
yep.
Right? Yeah.
Yep. It's legal. It's legal in most states. Yeah. You probably
can't drive around in a old CHP vehicle with a scanner on your dashboard and sunglasses at night. But other than that.
Sunglasses at night, but no, you can have them inside your car. Really? I think it varies from state to state, but most states that's completely not a problem. Transmissions are either encrypted or unencrypted. If they're unencrypted, then please know exactly that this is something that people do.
Yeah, it's through the air. Alex Lindsay, we're going to end with you. How many Alexes is this going to cost me?
Not many at all. In fact, it's almost free, not quite free. So I've talked about it before, but I think that they have a new update that I think is kind of interesting and something I've been thinking about. This is Belus 3D. And this is an iPhone app that will let you scan your head. And so I bring it back
like
up because
sticking your head in the Xerox machine, because that was a lot of fun.
Exactly. Except you get 3D out the other end. And so there are two uses. One is one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up right now is they actually have a new update to let you build your own face mask. So the structure for your face mask. I thought that Leo might.
I'm going to do this right now. Yeah.
Yeah. So you can basically scan your face, and then it will build the kind of that hard structure that you might want around your mask, for you. And it'll export an STL for a couple dollars, $2 or $3 or something like that, and then you can just print it out on your printer. And so I think it's kind of cool. It'll also export the STL of that mask, but you can also export an OBJ of your head. And then the interesting thing about that is that if you want to design your own mask, and so here's what I'm working on is, I can't believe someone hasn't done this yet, and I'm not going to turn it into a business, so I'm just going to tell all of you my big plan, is they make these DPAs without the hard piece here. They make them just out of an end of a cord. That's what they use in Opera, and they make Countryman.
He's talking about the microphone he uses. The
microphone. I'm sorry. Yeah, the microphone I use that's a headset that I forgot to switch over to my other one. I hope I sounded okay today.
Sound great. Yeah.
Sound great.
Anyway, so this microphone, they make it with just a little real thin cable that's the same width as this is here, but so what I want to do is I want to have a face mask. I have to do production, and I need to be on comms. And comms and face masks don't get along. So what I'm working on right now is I'm scanning my face with Bellis, exporting to an OBJ, and then building a face mask that is designed to basically allow me to. It's got little hooks on it that allow me to kind of snap in a filter. Countryman inside of it.
You want to wear a mask with your microphone in it.
The mic inside of it. Wow. And so I'm using it for that. But I'm doing mine's a little harder because I'm actually building a 3D model of what I want, and then I'll put it'll be an ectoskeleton on the inside that I'll put the face mask on the outside, but on the inside it'll be something that I can snap my mic into so that I can go back and have it be part of the comms. Anyway, so that, but the point is that Alex, if you want to design your own mask, there you go.
Are you absolutely certain this isn't just an excuse to professionally wear a stormtrooper mask? Because it sounds like what you're describing is a stormtrooper mask.
I don't know if we were missing, but I'm still waiting for my Bane mask. My big dream is to have the Bane mask and go to Whole Foods and say, "Are you looking for the bananas? They're not here." So anyway, but I think that masks are a really fun, creative opportunity for us that we haven't, I don't think we've fully leveraged yet. So I have a lot of boring masks, and I realize that I haven't been really thinking hard enough. So this could last for a little while. And
these masks have little hooks for the rubber bands, so you put that over your surgical mask. You need to be but I could put it over my mask, I guess, and then the rubber bands hold it in place. This is very interesting. And incidentally, you don't have to have a 3D printer. They have partners who will print them off for you, as well.
So you can scan your face and then have one delivered.
Wonder how much it is.
I don't know, but I was thinking you could send it to Shapeways and have it made out of metal.
Oh, now we're getting Baney.
That's all I'm saying.
Now we're getting Baney. Yeah. Mm-hmm. This is cool, man.
Follow-up question. Are we absolutely sure this isn't actually being produced by a Chinese company that wants to improve their ability to do facial recognition underneath masks?
Could be. It's $19.99 from Forecast 3D.
So that's not that expensive.
Yeah, that's not bad. So it's $20, and they have a variety of colors. And you obviously have to send them.
It's cheaper than a face mask I would buy.
Send them the model. Any tips for doing a Bellis 3D model? Alex, anything I should know?
It's so easy. You literally follow the instructions. You open it up like this, and it says, turn your head this way, turn your head that way, and that's it. And it's got a 3D model. It's a super easy app to use.
I'm ordering it right now, and I hope I get it by next show because I will wear it.
There you go. Well, you have to do the scan.
Yeah. Well, that takes no time.
No, it doesn't. It takes a minute.
I used to have this on my they also do a dental thing. I don't know. For dental,
I saw that. I was like, I don't know what that is.
PPE for dentists.
You're going to want to wash your phone after that, I think.
Do not put the phone in your mouth. That was fun. Thank you.
Super fun.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Andy Anako, appearances coming up on GBH?
Yep, GBH on Friday, probably at 11:30. They've been kind enough to like try to schedule me after my usual time of 11:30 because every now and then the mayor or the governor wants to talk about whatever's going on, particularly with the various cataclysms hitting us. So probably 11:30, if not about an hour after that. Either way, go to WGBHnews.org on Friday night or Saturday morning. You'll be able to just do a search for my segment and you'll be able to find it.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was scanning my face. Sorry. I was listening.
If I can elaborate on that. What I like about these tech segments is that we talk about the issues, more about gadgets. So while I might be speaking a little bit about WWDC, we're probably going to be talking a lot about these EU and House Judiciary Committee antitrust investigations. Also, we are considerably concerned about facial identity, facial recognition. Particularly as opposed as how IBM and Amazon and Microsoft are trying to keep out of the
90%. Look, it's me. Hey, Mario. Look at that.
Right.
Look at that.
Oh, weird.
That's wild.
Oh, that's so cool.
Here, you could show it on the over the shoulder, John. Can you? It's good. All it needs is this part. Maybe I shouldn't have smiled. What do you think?
I think it says don't smile somewhere in the instructions.
Yeah, you're gonna have to try it again.
That's wild.
Look at that. Isn't that
when
easy?
will Apple be able to create an Animoji like custom based on?
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be a better Animoji?
You know, I think that
make it nice and cartoon-like though.
Yeah, exactly. It has to be.
Yeah.
I do think you could take that.
Oh, look, it's coming alive.
I am the great and powerful Neo. Pay no attention to the man behind the desk.
Jeez Louise. This is scary. All right. So, yeah, what you do is you do this. You don't smile, so I'll do it again. Unless you want to smile the whole time you're wearing your mask. And then you order it online, and then the app asks you for your order code. You enter it, and you're done. That's pretty darn easy. And then you get this plastic thing, which, what do you think, Alex? You think that'll help? Go right around the mask? I think so.
I'm more interested in designing ones from the scan, but I think that the mask
because you
idea
have
is
skills.
Cool.
You have mad skills. I don't have skills.
But kudos to all of you. In a world of people that can't be convinced to wear any mask at all, you're trying to make the most closest fitting and coolest mask ever. God bless all of you.
You know what they call that? You know what they call that, Andy? It's embrace
wanting to live.
Embrace it, baby. Alex
into
Lindsay, I will see you on Thursday at 7 a.m.
8 o'clock. Oh, well, if you can come at 7:45, just to kind of.
I'll come at 7, just so I'm there.
Come at 7, and then you can watch the.
I can see how it works. Yeah, I can get an idea.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm definitely coming for that one.
Awesome, Andy.
It's part of his office hours. Alex does these every morning, bright and early, at every day. bit.ly/theofficehours with caps for T, O, and H. Or you can follow him, go to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/Alex Lindsay, LANDSAY. And there's a link there as you go through the comments.
You can also get a sample there because we put all the Q&A hours, not the second hours, but all the Q&A hours during the weekdays. Those are all up there. So there's like 20 of them you can listen to if you want.
Nice. Lori Gill, managing editor at imore.com. Thank you so much for being here. Anything you want to plug?
WWDC that's coming next week that you can read all about it on iMore. I just keep thinking about how I'm not going to be sitting in a hotel room with a computer on my lap typing. I feel like I should spend all of next week just working from my bed.
Absolutely.
You know, Lori, if there's a way that you can sandbag your Wi-Fi and your cell phone access just to make sure you don't like freak out, that you can actually get access to the internet while you're taking your notes.
People often ask me, aren't you mad at Apple that you don't get to go to the Apple events? And I say, no. I'm happy. I sit right here. I can lord it over them. Well, Lori, we look forward to seeing you. I guess, I don't know who's rotating out. Whoever we get to see next week, we will see you then. Renee will be back. And, of course, we'll be talking about whatever Apple has to say on Monday.
I think next week is my week
You're
off.
rotating out? Okay, so Lori, Andy, and Renee will be next week. And we will be obviously dissecting all of the announcements. Micah Sargent and I will be sitting a judge and jury watching the Apple event starting at 10 a.m. Pacific. That is 1 p.m. Eastern, 1700 UTC, twit.tv/live on Monday. So you could watch the Apple stream. You probably should. I highly encourage you to. But if you're not, you could watch it with us, kind of in a group thing like that. Maybe my mask will be here by then and I won't infect you. Thanks for being here, everybody. We'll see you next time. Now you get back to work because you know what? Break time is over. Over, I say.
Check out other shows here on Twit TV, including my show, Hands-On Photography. On this show, I'm going to show you how to get the most out of your camera, as well as be a better post-processor. So head on over to twit.tv/hop and subscribe now.